Chapter 53. After Tianyang and Wu Mingshi left the stage, the next battle began. However, it seemed that every time Tianyang appeared, the audience's enthusiasm for the next battle would decrease drastically. The battle between the 6th and 7th place was also very intense. It was considered exciting for cultivators in the refinement realm. However, the group of people lacked interest. Their gazes constantly swept back and forth between Tianyang and Wu Mingshi. Even until now, some of the diehards still did not dare to believe that Tianyang had really risen. Tianyang could not be bothered with such people. He only quietly watched the people in the arena. Not long after, the second round of battles also ended. Among the 8 people who advanced, only a young girl was left. She was not originally in the top 10 of the outer disciples. After a short rest, Elder Lin looked around at the crowd and confirmed the extent of everyone's recovery. His space bag vibrated slightly. Then, the lottery box appeared in his hand. Seeing this scene, many people tensed up. It was obvious that the third round was about to begin. The first match of the third round, Tianyang, Lu Yuhan. Elder Lin said with a strange expression as he read the number on the slip of paper. Hearing this, everyone was stunned. Lu Hanshi, who was ranked second in the outer disciples, had a strange expression on her face when she heard this name. Lu Yuhan was Lu Hanshi's younger sister. However, her cultivation was only at the peak of body refinement realm level 7. Tianyang could even defeat Wu Mingshi, who was at the peak of body refinement realm level 8. Lu Hanshi would definitely not be able to enter the 4th round. Lu Yuhan was also shocked when she heard Tianyang's name. Someone who could defeat Wu Mingshi was at least in the top 5 of the outer disciples. Although she was also an outer disciple, she was different from the others. She did not have any concept of Tianyang. Other than his name, she did not know anything else. She did not even know that he was the most famous trash. Trembling with fear, she went up the stage with Tianyang. Tianyang also looked at the girl in front of him with interest. He wasn't tall, only about 1.6 meters tall. He only reached his shoulders. His figure was also ordinary, and his face was delicate and pretty. This was exactly the same as his brother. Her only distinguishing feature was her long blue hair. However, Tianyang closed his eyes and sensed that Lu Yuhan's strength was indeed a little weak. According to common sense, a person at the peak of the 7th level of the body refinement realm should have a vitality of 200 feet. According to Tianyang standards, it should be 250 feet. However, Lu Yuhan's vitality was only 180 feet. Oh well, the martial Dao seems to have declined quite a bit after 10,000 years. I remember in my previous life, although there weren't many body refinement realm cultivators who broke through to the 490-foot realm, there weren't too few either. Only in 10,000 years, this pseudo-perfect 490-foot realm cultivator has become a legendary genius. After sighing, Tianyang mobilized the true Yuan in his body. He did not plan to use the Tongming fist. The hidden force of the Tongming fist was too explosive. Even if Tianyang used his heart to control it, it would inevitably hurt the girl in front of him. As for the fine steel sword on his back, forget it. Unless it was an outer sect genius like Lu Hanshi, Tianyang would not even use it to deal with ordinary people. Tianyang's movement was not big, but it was not small either. The sudden activation of the true Yuan gave Lu Yuhan a fright. She then said in a trembling voice, I admit defeat, just as I thought. Hearing this, Lu Hanshi patted her head and muttered. Hearing this, Tianyang was stunned. He then smiled bitterly. Was he that fierce? However, admitting defeat was also good. At least he got 1 point. Third round, first match, Tianyang wins. This result was not out of Elder Lin's expectations. Therefore, after announcing it expressionlessly, Elder Lin reached his hand into the lottery box again. Second match. The first match ended without even using true Yuan. Tianyang was quite surprised. However, if he could avoid fighting, he would not. After all, in this intersect disciple assessment, Tianyang did not want to use too much of his strength. Very soon, the matches were over. Tianyang could not help but yawn. other than the few instant kills by Ling Yuhan and Lu Hanxi that were a little interesting. The rest were mediocre. It was either their fist techniques that were full of mistakes or their body techniques were weak. It was not easy to meet someone who used a weapon, but he did not understand the essence of it at all. If not for Tianyang's principle of keeping a low profile, he would have rushed out to teach him what a sword was. Letting a sword emperor watch a group of children play with swords, and play with swords without any standard, was simply the greatest torture. After the third round, Tianyang finally sighed. It was finally going to end. The sun was no longer high in the sky. It was already close to the western mountains. The magical beast hunt would probably be tomorrow. Out of the 8 people who advanced, 4 of them advanced to the 4th round. They were Ling Yuhan, Lu Hanxi, Tianyang, and the 5th in the outer sect, Xiao Hao. This Xiao Hao was the original owner of this body. The previous Tianyang had met him a few times before. However, those few meetings were not pleasant at all. Xiao Hao was also a disciple of one of the 8 great families of the Snowgale State. He was a member of the Xiao family that was on par with the Tian family. However, the difference between the previous Tianyang and Xiao Hao was like the difference between heaven and earth. Xiao Hao was the 3rd son of the Xiao family's patriarch. Unlike Tianyang, who was the only son, he enjoyed terrifying resources that the previous Tianyang could not imagine. Therefore, at the age of 15, he had reached the peak of the 8th level of the body refinement realm. The previous Tianyang was also humiliated by Xiao Hao. Xiao Hao was one of the people who had been mocking Tianyang. What? Why are you looking at me? Could it be that you, the disgrace of the Tian family, can't wait for this young master to beat you back to your original state after reaching this stage with great difficulty? Looking at Tianyang with contempt, Xiao Hao sneered in his heart and mocked. In his heart, Tianyang was always the trash who was humiliated by him and did not dare to talk back. Even if he defeated Wu Mingshi, Xiao Hao would not be shocked. After all, in Xiao Hao's heart, Wu Mingshi was also someone who would be defeated by him. Hearing this, Tianyang raised his eyelids and laughed softly. When did you have the misconception that I would look at you? Then Tianyang chuckled and turned his head away. He was too lazy to even look at Xiao Hao. Seeing this, Xiao Hao's expression immediately twisted and his face flushed red. He stared fixedly at Tianyang's back as he stood with his hands behind his back. This fellow who had been humiliated by him so many years ago actually dared to treat him like this. Chapter 54. The first match of the 4th round, Tianyang, Xiao Hao. Elder Lin's loud voice instantly spread throughout the entire sect's assessment grounds. Upon hearing this, the expressions of the crowd changed one after another. Although Xiao Hao's strength was only ranked 5th among the outer disciples, his actual strength was slightly stronger than Wu Mingshi's. After all, the Xiao family was one of the 8 great families of the Snowgale State. Their strength was not much weaker than the Tian family. The cultivation resources that Xiao Hao received were far from what the outer disciples of the Soaring Cloud sect had. In addition, Xiao Hao's talent was not considered weak. With all these factors combined, it was not surprising that Xiao Hao had such strength. With Tianyang's strength, to be able to defeat Wu Mingshi, he must have used all his strength. If he were to encounter the stronger Xiao Hao, he would be defeated in less than 30 rounds. Some people looked at the two standing opposite each other and said after comparing. Hearing this, many people nodded their heads. Wu Mingshi's martial spirit is only of the mid-grade yellow rank. Even if he used it, it would not increase his battle strength by much. However, Xiao Hao is different. His martial spirit is of the highest quality among the high-grade yellow rank. The Xiao family's inherited martial spirit, Flame. The Flame martial spirit is much stronger than the Raging Flame Fist that Bai Lu used before. I am sure that if Xiao Hao used the Flame martial spirit, Tianyang would not be able to last more than 20 rounds. After all, even if Tianyang's cultivation talent is not bad, a low-grade yellow rank martial spirit is too weak. The 7th outer disciple said honestly. Hearing this, Bai Xiang, who was beside him, also showed a resentful expression. That's right. Tianyang, this kind of trash, should be beaten into a retard by Xiao Hao. He is the young master of the Tian family. Now, he can only be tortured to death by the young master of the Shao family. Bai Xiang said angrily. Hearing this, the seventh outer disciple frowned. He did not say this, but it was obvious that Bai Xiang hated Tianyang to the core. Although the Bai family behind Bai Lu was not one of the 8 great families of the Snow Gale State, its power was not weak. Even if Bai Xiang's position in the prodigal family was not high, he was not someone he could offend. Ha! I didn't expect to meet you in the first match of the 4th round. Do you think that you're powerful just because you're able to enter the martial path and defeat Wu Mingshi? Looking insolently at Tianyang, Xiao Hao laughed maniacally. Low-grade yellow, ranked martial spirit? This kind of trash can't even be considered trash. You were lucky enough to enter the martial Dao, but you managed to condense such a trash martial spirit. You even managed to study martial skills to such an extent and even defeated Wu Mingshi. It must have been hard on you. But I'm going to tell you now, the core of the martial Dao was the martial spirit. Only with a strong martial spirit can one's martial Dao be strong. Your low-grade yellow rank trash martial spirit will only end up being slaughtered by my high-grade yellow rank martial spirit. You think that just because you're the son of the Tian family's patriarch and the young master of the Tian family, you could be so arrogant? But little did they know, in front of my high-grade yellow ranked martial spirit, your so-called low-grade yellow ranked martial spirit is just trash. Everything about you, in my eyes, is just an ant-like existence. Xiao Hao sneered. Hearing this, Tianyang frowned slightly. Whether it was the former Tianyang or the current Tianji Sword Emperor, it seemed that they had never provoked this person. In that case, what was wrong with this person's head? Moreover, the martial spirit was the core of the martial Dao. Tianyang couldn't help but grin when he heard this. 10,000 years ago, before martial souls had even appeared in this world, there had already been such a resplendent martial civilization. He didn't expect that after the birth of the martial spirit, there would still be people who put the martial spirit on the martial Dao. For such people, Tianyang could only sneer. It's useless to say more. Trash like you, living in this world, is a disgrace to the Tian family, one of the 8 great families. Since that's the case, then let me clean up the Tian family's house. Xiao Hao roared. Then, his figure suddenly disappeared and appeared in front of Tianyang. Crimson flame palm. A deafening roar came out of Xiao Hao's mouth. Then, the peak of the 8th level of the body refinement realm circulated at full force and condensed on Xiao Hao's palm. The flames burned fiercely as if they were real. Seeing this, Tianyang smiled lightly. Without fear, he directly punched out. Tongming Fist, 13 echoes. The tyrannical physical strength brought by the Earth Dragon body directly exploded at the point where Tianyang and Xiao Hao's fist collided. Without giving Xiao Hao any time to react, Tianyang's figure flashed. Dragon subduing step executed. This terrifying explosion directly caused Xiao Hao's body to freeze in midair. At this time, Tianyang's figure had already appeared behind Xiao Hao. Damn! Flame martial spirit. Seeing that Tianyang had unknowingly appeared behind him, Xiao Hao's face changed greatly. He didn't care about the terrifying force on his palm that was about to explode his flesh and hurriedly turn around. Flame martial spirit, ignite. When a high-grade yellow martial spirit was executed, it immediately caused the crowd to feel a trace of pressure. Martial spirit, martial spirit. The higher the grade of the martial spirit, the stronger the martial spirit's pressure. Xiao Hao possessed a high-grade yellow martial spirit. In addition to his Shao clan's bloodline, the power of this high-grade yellow martial spirit had already reached the peak of the high-grade yellow martial spirit. For the outer disciples of the Lingyun sect, Xiao Hao's martial spirit was already one of the strongest. Even among the inner disciples, there were very few people who could surpass Xiao Hao in terms of martial spirit quality. Haha, high-grade yellow martial spirit, crushing your low-grade yellow martial spirit. Trash martial spirit, trash person die. Xiao Hao roared ferociously. Flames covered both of his arms. Then, one after another, he punched out. Scarlet Flame Fist. It was originally a high-grade yellow martial skill of the fire attribute. After Xiao Hao used his high-grade yellow martial spirit, its power began to skyrocket. It was already infinitely close to the profound rank. At this moment, Tianyang was still standing in the same place. He didn't even raise his hand. Could it be that Tianyang is crazy and wants to die? Xiao Hao's flame martial spirit coupled with the scarlet flame fist? Even I have to be serious. This guy actually dares to be so arrogant and not move? Lu Hanshi, who was standing to the side, looked at Tianyang in the middle of the field with a serious expression. Scarlet flame fist? Flame martial spirit. It sounds quite delicious. The corners of Tianyang's mouth curled into a smile. Then, his fingers slightly curled. 13 hidden forces explode. The 13 hidden forces had already been distributed throughout Xiao Hao's body through his meridians. They were hidden within his meridians like poisonous snakes in the desert, hiding but not releasing. Now they had exploded. The power from all over his body directly caused Xiao Hao's body to distort. He spat a mouthful of blood. The scarlet flame fist that he hadn't used yet was directly broken. Xiao Hao's face suddenly flushed red to the extreme. He stared at Tianyang in front of him like a madman. Tianyang, you're playing dirty. All's fair in war. Tianyang chuckled. At this moment, Xiao Hao roared in anger. The flame martial spirit on his arms was suddenly dyed red with blood. Since that's the case, then don't blame me for being ruthless. Blood flame fist. At this moment, Xiao Hao's cultivation fluctuated slightly. He broke through. Chapter 55. Body Refinement Stage, 9th Level. Many people were shocked when they saw Xiao Hao's strength suddenly rise explosively, and they were incomparably astonished. Xiao Hao was previously only at the peak of the 8th level of the Body Refinement Stage. There was still a considerable distance between him and the 9th level of the Body Refinement Stage. However, in the battle with Tianyang, he had actually broken through. The gap between the peak of the 8th level of the Body Refinement Stage and the 9th level of the Body Refinement Stage was also incomparably huge. Even if Tianyang was really very strong, it would not be as easy as before. Furthermore, Xiao Hao had even used the unique martial art of the Xiao clan, one of the 8 great clans of Snowgale State, the Blood Flame Fist. The Blood Flame Fist burned one's own blood to greatly increase one's attack power. If one had the support of a 9th level of the Body Refinement Stage, then an ordinary peak of the 9th level of the Body Refinement Stage would not be able to receive it. For a moment, the crowd that had been stunned by Tianyang's performance also revealed a trace of a sigh. This Tianyang's luck was ultimately too bad. If Xiao Hao had not broken through at the last moment, based on Tianyang's performance, he would absolutely be able to defeat Xiao Hao in one move. However, from the looks of it now, it was not very possible. The heavens are really helping me. It actually allowed me to break through to the 9th level of the Body Refinement Stage at this time. Tianyang, prepare to die. Feeling the change in the aura within his body, Xiao Hao also understood and madly mocked. The fist that was burning with the blood-red flame in his hand also sped up again. Seeing this, Tianyang raised his eyelids and looked at the arrogantly laughing Xiao Hao in front of him. The arc at the corner of his mouth also extended a little. Blood flame fist, burning one's own blood. You really aren't afraid of death. Using your own blood to execute this low-level profound martial art, why bother? Tianyang lightly sighed, following which, the fine steel sword on his back trembled for a moment and suddenly shot out. You only thought of using a sword now? Too late. Furthermore, with your low-level yellow-level trash martial spirit, even if you used a sword, what use would it be? Seeing the steel sword suddenly appear in Tianyang's hand, Xiao Hao laughed wildly. His words were filled with contempt and ridicule. Seeing this, some people in the audience shook their heads and looked sadly at Tianyang. In their opinion, the reason why Tianyang used his sword at the last moment was completely because he had lost all hope and was putting up a desperate struggle. At this moment, Tianyang chuckled and began to swing his steel sword. Just like the clouds in the sky, they were graceful and traceless, and there was no trace of them at all. It was as if Xiao Hao's crazy speed had slowed down by quite a bit. It wasn't that Xiao Hao had slowed down, but that Tianyang's speed had reached a strange level. It might seem slow, but in truth, it was already extremely fast. Flowing cloud sword art, sword emerging from flowing clouds. In an instant, the elegant and natural swordsmanship suddenly changed into a real killing move. And at this moment, the concept of flowing cloud that Tianyang had grasped completely bloomed. The raging blood flames were directly extinguished the instant they came into contact with the sword chi of the flowing cloud sword technique. Xiao Hao's expression didn't even have time to change before it froze. This was because the sharp steel sword had directly pierced through the layers of defense that he had temporarily condensed and arrived in front of him, following which Tianyang lightly chuckled and spat out a word. Explode. Bang. The flowing cloud sword chi of the flowing cloud sword technique completely exploded. The heavenly sword martial spirit also condensed on the steel sword at this moment. Then, the sword chi directly swept through the entire arena. Flowing cloud sword technique. This is the flowing cloud sword technique. Even a genius disciple like Luo Fian couldn't successfully cultivate the flowing cloud sword technique. This Tianyang actually succeeded in cultivating it. Suddenly standing up, Elder Lin's gaze was fixed on the calm and composed Tianyang in the arena. Rays of disbelief flashed in his eyes. Even as an elder at the third level of the Bright Chi realm, he had heard of the famous flowing cloud sword technique. Back then, he had also used it to cultivate a few times. However, just like Luo Fian, he had cultivated it a few times without any results. That incomparably profound flowing cloud diagram, he hadn't even comprehended a corner of it. And Elder Lin was also certain that although the flowing cloud sword technique was powerful, it was completely used to torment people. It was simply impossible for anyone to be able to successfully cultivate it. When Tianyang had borrowed the drifting cloud sword technique, the elder who was guarding the pavilion had mentioned that someone had borrowed the drifting cloud sword technique when he was chatting with Elder Lin. Back then, he had also been like the pavilion elder and listened with the thought that it was impossible for that person to successfully cultivate it. And now, the flowing cloud sword technique that he had cultivated countless times to no avail had appeared on Tianyang's body. The identity of the outer court disciple who had borrowed the flowing cloud sword technique was also on the verge of being revealed. A few months ago, one of the three great trash of the outer court, Tianyang. How was this possible? Elder Lin's intense emotions were not detected by anyone. At this moment, in the arena, Xiao Hao's shrill scream was even more shocking than Tianyang's sword aura sweeping through the arena. That superior grade yellow rank flame martial spirit was like snow meeting fire after coming into contact with Tianyang's flowing cloud sword technique. It was directly melted into true essence. And following the melting of the flame martial spirit, Xiao Hao also felt a slight stabbing pain in the depths of his soul. This was a sign that his soul power had been damaged. No matter how he thought about it, he would never have thought that Tianyang, who he had previously looked down upon, would actually use only one sword to break his blood flame fist and his flame martial spirit in the arena. Bastard! The stabbing pain in his soul grew stronger and stronger. Xiao Hao was also in a state of madness. The true essence in his body circulated and directly condensed in his hand. It looked like he wanted to make a fatal attack. Stake it all in one throw? Do you think you have the qualifications to do so? Seeing this, as the Tianji Sword Emperor, Tianyang naturally saw through Xiao Hao's actions with a glance. With a cold laugh, the fine steel sword in his hand mercilessly slashed out. In an instant, the raging flames instantly disappeared. The purest martial spirit energy within was also completely devoured by Tianyang. On the fine steel sword, the sky cloud sword's light faintly shone. This meant that he was one step closer to the superior grade yellow rank. And in the next moment, Xiao Hao, whose flame martial spirit had been completely destroyed, no longer had any strength to organize a counterattack. His true essence had been completely exhausted. Even if he was at the ninth level of the body refinement realm, he would not be able to save himself from defeat. Following that, Tianyang took a step forward and lightly waved the fine steel sword in his hand. A formless shockwave directly exploded out. That terrifying shockwave directly exploded out. In the end, Xiao Hao's body was directly sent flying. A large mouthful of blood spat out from Xiao Hao's mouth. The sound of bones breaking could be heard. Tianyang's expression was calm as he looked at Xiao Hao, who had yet to lose consciousness, and spat out 2 words. Ant? At this moment, Xiao Hao's eyes widened and he opened his mouth. In the end, he spat out another mouthful of blood. His broken body simply could not withstand this kind of injury. His neck tilted and he directly fainted. Many people, after seeing this scene, also secretly swallowed a mouthful of saliva. Unconsciously, their hands and feet actually trembled. Xiao Hao had lost. He had lost so thoroughly. Chapter 56. Looking at Xiao Hao, who was unconscious like a dead dog, the crowd's hearts trembled continuously. Once upon a time, just like Tianyang, Xiao Hao, who was also the young master of the Xiao clan, one of the 8 great clans of Snowgale State, despised and humiliated Tianyang. Although Bai Xiang didn't humiliate Tianyang to the point of wanting to kill Tianyang before he met Bai Lu, it was the greatest blow to Tianyang's confidence. Among the 8 great clans, the relationship between the Tian clan and the Xiao clan wasn't good, but it wasn't bad either. When the previous Tianyang met Xiao Hao for the first time in the Lingyun sect, he hoped that Xiao Hao would say something good. However, what awaited him wasn't words of comfort, but naked mockery and contempt. And it was at that time that the previous Tianyang's heart was filled with despair. That was why he gave up on himself and died in a strange way. But now, Xiao Hao, who used to mock and despise Tianyang and treated Tianyang like an ant, was beaten up by Tianyang in the inner disciple assessment. This shocking fact caused the crowd to feel incomparably shocked. How is it? Turning his head, Tianyang glanced at Bai Xiang, who was staring at him with hatred, and laughed lightly. When he heard this, Bai Xiang's face suddenly turned extremely ugly. His legs started to tremble uncontrollably, afraid that Tianyang, whose aura had soared to the sky, would suddenly fly over and slash him in half. After all, Tianyang's strength had surpassed him by countless times. Even people like Bai Lu and Xiao Hao were killed by Tianyang. Although his strength had reached the 7th level of the body refinement realm, when facing Tianyang, who he didn't know anything about, there was only one word for him: death. The huge gap in strength caused the hatred in Bai Xiang's heart to turn into fear. Looking at Bai Xiang's current appearance, Tianyang also laughed lightly and didn't bother to pay attention to him. Looking at Bai Xiang's appearance, it was obvious that his will had been completely destroyed by Tianyang. Even if there was a huge miracle in the future, it would be impossible to make up for it. In other words, Bai Xiang could only stop at the body refinement realm for the rest of his life. 4th round. First match, Tianyang, Xiao Hao. Tianyang wins. Looking at the calm and composed Tianyang with incomparable shock, Elder Lin's heart was also in a perilous situation. Was this still the trash he had heard of? For a prodigy like this, it was completely possible for him to stand shoulder to shoulder with Ling Yuhan. At the very least, he was already in the top 2. Could it be that the Drift Cloud sword art is really that powerful? Elder Lin could only make such a guess, as he was unable to find anything special about Tianyang. However, Tianyang did not have the obligation to answer Elder Lin's question. Instead, he smiled gently and returned to his original position. He returned the fine steel sword to its scabbard. Clenching his fist, Tianyang felt the powerful physical strength boiling in his body. He was a little confused. How strong was the Earth Dragon body? 4th round, second match. Ling Yuhan, Lu Hanqi. At this moment, the battle between the former number 1 and number 2 had also begun. Tianyang, who was thinking about how strong his physical strength was, put down the thoughts in his heart and watched the battle. Ling Yuhan's strength had reached body refinement realm level 9. She was not far from the peak of body refinement realm level 9. However, Lu Hanqi was not weak either. Her cultivation was the same as Ling Yuhan's. In fact, it was slightly higher than Ling Yuhan's. As for the blood chi of the two, it was exactly the same. They were both 350 feet. Not to mention Tianyang, who had a perfect body refinement realm. Even a pseudo-perfect body wouldn't be able to achieve this. It seems that martial arts have declined quite a bit after 10,000 years. Tianyang sighed. Then he watched the battle. Lu Hanqi and Ling Yuhan's strength were not weak. However, Lu Hanqi's proficiency in her moves was far inferior to Ling Yuhan's, who looked much younger than him. Ling Yuhan looked like she was about the same age as Tianyang. She was only 15 years old. However, each of her punches was fatal. Although her strength was not great, her combat experience was extremely shocking. However, regardless of whether it was Ling Yuhan or Lu Hanqi, no matter how rich their combat experience was, Tianyang felt that they were no different from children playing house. However, for a 15-year-old girl like Ling Yuhan, this level of combat experience was enough to make people click their tongues in amazement. Sharp finger, rumbling wave fist. After a period of battle, both of them had used up a lot of their true origin. At this moment, they both displayed their strongest martial arts. Ling Yuhan's index finger seemed to be flickering with a jade blue light. Just a glance at that halo was enough to make one dizzy. At this moment, Ling Yuhan's martial spirit was finally exposed. Like Xiao Hao's flame martial spirit, it was also an upper yellow class martial spirit. Moreover, it was an extremely rare ice spiritual fox among the demonic beasts. As for Lu Hanqi, her martial spirit was much more ordinary. Although her martial spirit was also an upper yellow class martial spirit, the type of martial spirit was the popular Wind Fong Wolf. However, Lu Hanqi's rumbling wave fist was completely different from the sharp finger. It walked the path of ferocity and dominance. It was extremely compatible with his Wind Fong Wolf martial spirit. One finger and one punch. It seemed like the sharp finger was at a disadvantage. However, the actual situation was completely different. Bang! The two true origin collided fiercely. Ling Yuhan's true origin was even more condensed than Lu Hanqi's. In addition to the penetrating power of the sharp finger, Lu Hanqi's rumbling wave fist was directly broken. Lu Hanqi could only laugh bitterly as her strongest martial arts was broken, and even her martial spirit was suppressed. She took a few steps back and cupped her fists. Yes, I have lost. Hearing this, Ling Yuhan nodded slightly. You're not weak either. If you didn't meet me, you might be able to become the champion. No one took Tianyang seriously. After all, Tianyang had already revealed his strength to defeat Xiao Hao and Bai Lu. However, this was only temporary. The grade of one's martial spirit determined one's martial talent. If one's martial spirit was only a lower yellow class martial spirit, it would be impossible for one's martial talent to be comparable to those who had awakened upper yellow class martial spirits. Now, perhaps Tianyang was slightly stronger, but in the eyes of the crowd, Tianyang's future would never be comparable to Ling Yuhan, Lu Hanqi, or even Bai Lu and Xiao Hao. It's a pity that Tianyang only has a lower yellow class martial spirit. Although he's strong now, it's impossible for him to be comparable to those who have awakened upper yellow class martial spirits in the future. One of them sighed and said. Hearing this, the person beside him sneered and said, no matter if it's Wu Mingshi, Xiao Hao, or Bai Lu, they're still quite a distance away from Lu Hanqi and Ling Yuhan. Even if he's lucky enough to make it to the final round, he won't be able to become the champion against Ling Yuhan. This trash is already very lucky to be able to make it to this stage. Do you really think that he'll be able to become the champion? Hearing this, the person who sighed previously fell silent. Following this, the rest period came to an end. Now, the final round, Tianyang and Ling Yuhan. Elder Lin also pulled out the last two lots from the drawing box and shouted loudly. Tianyang and Ling Yuhan also stood up and went to the arena. They looked at each other. They were all clear. They knew that they were going to be the champion of the inner disciple assessment. Chapter 57. You're very strong. However, my strength will be even stronger. Although you've reached the point where even Xiao Hao and Wu Mingshi were defeated by you in a few short months, there's only one way for you to defeat me. Ling Yuhan said as she looked at Tianyang, who was standing with his hands behind his back. Her eyes were sparkling as if there were flames burning within them. Tianyang was slightly stunned when he heard her words. Soon after, the corners of his mouth cracked open. It seems that you're very confident. The battle had yet to begin, but there were already traces of gunpowder between the two of them. After all, the battle for first place was too important for the Lingyun sect's outer court disciples. Ling Yuhan had also had a similar exchange of words with Lu Hanxi before his final battle with her. It wasn't that a battle of words was useless, but if one could convince the opponent with words, then the battle would undoubtedly be much easier. However, this was only useful for those whose spiritual strength wasn't strong enough and whose will wasn't firm enough. Who was Tianyang? The Tianji Sword Emperor. His Tao heart had already been tempered to a point where no one in the world could compare with him. His spiritual strength had also reached the terrifying level of the peak of the heavenly completion stage. After experiencing the inconceivable matter of traveling through space, Tianyang's Tao heart had been tempered by a lot. Not to mention a battle of words of this level. Even if he was wrongly accused by the entire city, Tianyang's heart wouldn't be moved in the slightest. His heart was like a boulder. From the looks of it, Tianyang doesn't seem to be afraid of Senior Ling Yuhan. Could it be that Tianyang really has some sort of trump card? The people who were sighing because of Tianyang's martial spirit aptitude were now looking at Tianyang in shock. His indifferent appearance seemed to be the number one that they, the outer court disciples, were chasing after. Heavens, he didn't care at all? Trump card? Don't speak for that trash. He only has an upper yellow rank martial spirit aptitude. Even if he's strong now, what's the use? At this moment, the person beside him also sneered and said, Tianyang is only bluffing. Senior Ling Yuhan has already reached body refinement stage, level 9, a few months ago. Now, she might even be at the peak of body refinement stage, level 9. She's only a step away from clear Qi realm, level 1. Tianyang, no matter how strong he is, facing a body refinement stage, level 9, can only be defeated. Everyone sneered in their hearts, not putting Tianyang in their eyes. Hearing that, the person who had spoken for Tianyang earlier opened his mouth as if he wanted to say something. However, he could only shut his mouth helplessly. Moreover, Senior Ling Yuhan had a blood qi of 300 feet a few months ago. Now, it might even be 350 feet. With such a terrifying blood qi, even if Tianyang has a powerful treasure, in front of such power, only death awaits him. If I were Tianyang and luckily got into the top 2, then met Senior Ling Yuhan, I'd definitely admit defeat immediately. I wouldn't be foolishly bluffing here. The crowd sneered. At this moment, the two people standing in the middle of the field also moved. Tianyang didn't move, but Ling Yuhan patted the small bag hanging from her waist. Then, a long sword emitting an azure light suddenly appeared in her hand. Seeing this, the crowd was stunned. Then, some sharp-eyed people saw the long sword's background and couldn't help but cry out. Lower-ranked treasure weapon. This is a lower-ranked treasure weapon. In order to deal with Tianyang, Senior Ling Yuhan actually used a lower-ranked treasure weapon. Senior Ling is a sword cultivator. Who would have thought that Tianyang would be dead this time? Senior Ling Yuhan's attack power is already extremely strong. Now, with a lower-ranked treasure weapon, Tianyang may be a swordsman and has awakened a sword martial spirit, but there's no way he can withstand Senior Ling's attack. The crowd was shocked. Seeing this, Tianyang's brows furrowed slightly. This lower-ranked treasure weapon was different from the lower-ranked treasure weapon glove that he had shattered. That glove was already broken and had no defensive power at all. This long sword was completely different. The aura around it was smooth and natural, faintly emitting a sharp aura. The entire long sword, from top to bottom, did not have the slightest flaw. The only flaw was that the long sword was only a low-grade, bejeweled weapon. In order to fight for first place, I've also used my trump card, the Blue Sea Sword. Tianyang, if you have any trump cards, feel free to use them. Ling Yuhan said coldly as she gently stroked the body of the blue long sword. Hearing this, Tianyong smiled slightly. The scabbard on his back shook once again, and the fine steel sword that had appeared countless times once again fell into his hands. At this time, the fine steel sword flashed with a light, and the heavenly sword martial spirit also attached itself to the fine steel sword. However, the moment the crowd saw the fine steel sword, they were all stunned. Then, they started to laugh crazily. Ha ha ha! Am I seeing things? Facing Senior Ling Yuhan's lower-ranked treasure weapon, the blue sea sword, Tianyong actually used this fine steel sword? Even if his martial spirit is a sword, it's trash of a lower-rank yellow rank. It can't be compared to a lower-ranked treasure weapon. Even if he's empty-handed, it's still better than using this trashy fine steel sword. Tianyong is probably crazy. Mocking laughter came from all around and entered Tianyong's ears. Tianyong just smiled indifferently. Fine steel sword trash? Probably only an ordinary person who knew nothing about the way of the sword could say such a thing. Nothing was absolute trash. A lower-rank yellow-rank martial spirit also had the possibility of becoming a peerless heaven-rank martial spirit. In the hands of a sword emperor, not to mention a fine steel sword. Even if it was a tree branch, an iron rod, or even a leaf, it could be used to kill an enemy. Grass, wood, bamboo, or stone could all be used as a sword. This was the true, supreme realm of the way of the sword. Tianyong had even touched on a higher level. However, that realm was extremely mysterious and difficult to explain with words. Fine steel sword. However, there hadn't been a sword emperor in the Sky Continent for tens of thousands of years. Although the way of the sword was still prosperous, people still didn't know what the top realm of the way of the sword was. Ling Yuhan frowned and said, although a lower-ranked treasure weapon isn't necessarily invincible, your fine steel sword is still too weak. If you don't want to lose so quickly, then change to another one. Otherwise, empty-handed is still better than this fine steel sword that could be easily broken by my blue sea sword. Ling Yuhan said. Hearing this, Tianyong only smiled and didn't reply. It seems like you don't want to change. Since that's the case, let's fight. See Wave Cut. Chapter 58. Ocean Wave Slash. Ling Yuhan shouted, and the jade sea sword in her hand instantly emitted a dazzling light. Streaks of true origin circulated on the jade sea sword's blade. Seeing this, Tianyong's eyes narrowed slightly. Her control over true origin was pretty good. The emerald true origin turned into a blue radiance under the influence of the jade sea sword. Then it turned into an incomparably sharp sword chi and shot out violently. This is the Ocean Wave Slash. Half a year ago, Senior Sister Ling Yuhan used this Ocean Wave Slash when she fought with the third-ranked Gu Xiao. Even Gu Xiao couldn't block the attack of the Ocean Wave Slash when he used all his strength and was defeated immediately. Tianyong met Senior Sister Ling Yuhan's Ocean Wave Slash right from the start. It looks like Tianyong will be defeated without a doubt in a few minutes. Seeing the blue sword chi, some people couldn't help but exclaim. Hearing this, Bai Xiang sneered at the side. Tianyang's cultivation was at most at the peak of the 8th level of the body refinement realm. Although he was stronger than Bai Lu and him, Tianyang's cultivation was at the peak of the 8th level of the body refinement realm. However, in front of Ling Yuhan, who should be at the peak of body refinement realm level 9, Tianyang's little bit of cultivation was not even worth mentioning. For a body refinement realm cultivator, this Ocean Wave Slash is rather average and not bad. However, conforming to the rules means that there is no flexibility. Tianyang's lips curled into a smile. Then, he used the dragon's subduing step. His body suddenly turned illusory, and the fine steel sword in his hand brazenly struck out. Flowing Cloud Sword Technique, Cloud Shadow Sword. Cloud Shadow Sword was a part of the Flowing Cloud Sword Technique. It was a type of fast sword and was completely different from the Jade Sea Sword, which only had one strike of sword chi. However, fast sword did not necessarily mean that it would be weaker than the Jade Sea sword chi. The fine steel sword split into multiple sword shadows, dazzling everyone's eyes. At this moment, Tianyang's eyes narrowed slightly as he locked onto the enormous blue sword chi. The streaks of sword shadows struck the sword chi of the Jade Sea Sword. The attack power of a single sword shadow might not be very high, but when the countless sword shadows of the Cloud Shadow Sword were stacked together, it would be able to deal a huge blow. This power would become incomparably terrifying. Boom! A loud explosion sounded from the center of the battle. Ling Yuhan was hit by the shockwave, and her body leaned back a little. Then, she looked in that direction in disbelief. His ocean wave slash, which he had been accumulating power for a long time, was actually broken just like that. She had never heard of Tianyang's Cloud Shadow Sword. Although it might not be a weak sword, according to Tianyang's appearance, it should not be comparable to her ocean wave slash. Concentrating the power at one point is not bad. However, if this point is concentrated, the other parts of the power will be loose. This is a sword, not a spear. If your ocean wave slash was executed with a spear, then even I would not be able to break through it so easily. However, the attack of a sword is a line. You concentrated the power at one point. Naturally, I can make use of the weakness of the other parts to break your strength at one point. Tianyang chuckled. Hearing this, Ling Yuhan could not help but fall into deep thought. The more she thought, the greater the shock in her heart. Her ocean wave slash was just as Tianyang said. It was a martial art created by a powerful spear user in her family. Relying on this method of concentrating the power at one point, her attack power became extremely strong. However, in Tianyang's eyes, this was a flaw. However, my martial art technique is not just limited to the ocean wave slash. After pondering for a while, Ling Yuhan adjusted her expression. She snorted coldly and executed her movement technique, charging directly at Tianyang. Wind and rain, 5 swords. Ling Yuhan cried out delicately. The Jade Sea Sword in her hand once again emitted rays of light. At this time, the wind and rain 5 swords, which was not much different from the Cloud Shadow Sword that Tianyang had executed previously, transformed into streaks of sword shadows and attacked fiercely. Seeing this, Tianyang was not afraid at all. He suddenly slashed out with his fine steel sword. Bang, bang, bang. In a short period of time, Tianyang's fine steel sword and Ling Yuhan's wind and rain 5 swords clashed countless times. The more they fought, the more shocked Ling Yuhan was. Tianyang's mastery of the way of the sword was much stronger than she had imagined. Every sword strike wasn't very strong, and he didn't even use all of his quintessential origin energy. However, those swords, which weren't very strong, actually managed to break through her wind and rain 5 swords. He had not even used his full strength yet, but this was already so. What would happen if he used all of his strength? Thinking of this, Ling Yuhan's heart could not help but tremble. Even though Tianyang did not instantly kill his opponent with a few strikes like before, Ling Yuhan had a feeling that if Tianyang wanted to, her ending would not be much better than Xiao Hao and Bai Lu's. This person, is he really the trash in the rumors? Even though the sword was still moving, Ling Yuhan's fighting spirit was gradually being worn down. As for Tianyang, the smile on his face did not change. Since his rebirth, he had finally found a good seedling. Wasn't a bit too wasteful to kill her in one strike. The so-called geniuses all needed to be nurtured. However, he did not expect that the Lingyun sect would also have a fledgling of the way of the sword like Ling Yuhan. If he nurtured her well, in time, she might even become a strong female sword cultivator. The two people in the battle had different thoughts. However, the people watching from the outside all fell into a daze. Tianyang was actually fighting so fiercely with the number 1 outer disciple, Ling Yuhan. From Ling Yuhan's expression, it could be seen that Ling Yuhan had already used all of her strength. However, Tianyang was still able to fight with her in such a stalemate. Furthermore, looking at the situation, it seemed that Tianyang still had not used all of his strength. Didn't that mean that Tianyang far surpassed Ling Yuhan? This, just as a young man opened his mouth to say something, not a single word came out. Tianyang's performance was really too strong. so much so that even if they wanted to exclaim in admiration, it was overshadowed by the shock in their hearts. Compared to him, my way of the sword seems to be a bit too immature. Beside him, a handsome young man looked bitterly at the two people fighting in front of him. Gu Xiao, who had been defeated by Ling Yuhan in the third round, looked at Tianyang in front of him with extremely complicated feelings. He originally thought that his way of the sword was the strongest in the Ling Yun sect's outer disciple. However, when Ling Yuhan revealed that she was also a sword cultivator, his thoughts disappeared like smoke in thin air. Subsequently, he also believed that in the Ling Yun sect's outer disciple, he was only second to Ling Yuhan. And now, Tianyang had mercilessly slapped him a few times. Forget it. The way of the sword is never-ending. There will always be someone better than you. My way of the sword is still too weak. Gu Xiao let out a long sigh and paid attention to the battle below. At this moment, the battle for the number 1 spot was also coming to an end. Chapter 59. Even the Wind Rain 5 swords can't do anything to you. Ling Yuhan looked at the calm Tianyang in front of her and couldn't help but exclaim in shock. Hearing this, Tianyang smiled and didn't say anything. The Wind Rain 5 swords was at most a peerless yellow class martial art. It was still a distance away from the half-profound class martial art. However, a martial art of this level was considered pretty good for an outer disciple of the Lingyun sect. Bai Lu's strongest move, the Raging Flame Fist, was only a half-profound class martial art. Looking at the situation, Ling Yuhan's strongest move was definitely not this peerless yellow class Wind Rain 5 swords. Most likely, the current Ling Yuhan was about to make a big move. However, I'm determined to get the first place. So, Frost Sword, Ling Yuhan shouted in a low voice. Then, the power of her martial spirit was activated. Her martial spirit, the Ice Spiritual Fox, was an upper yellow class martial spirit that was close to the profound class. It could be said that the Ice Spiritual Fox wasn't inferior to Xiao Hao's martial spirit, which was an upper yellow class martial spirit. Moreover, the Ice Spiritual Fox was an extremely rare demonic beast on this continent. Although it wasn't very strong, it had a special talent to control ice. Using the Ice Spiritual Fox martial spirit to execute the Ice attribute Frost Sword. The two complemented each other. The lower profound class Wind Rain 5 swords is indeed not this little girl's strongest move. However, the lower profound class martial art is still far from the middle profound class Flowing Cloud sword art. Fine, I won't devour her martial spirit this time. Tianyang chuckled. Then, the steel sword in his hand suddenly changed. The true Yuan in his body was fully activated for the first time. The aura all over his body also underwent an extremely drastic change as he said this in his heart. From Ling Yuhan's point of view, Tianyang, who was originally unfathomable, seemed to have changed into a different person. Although Tianyang was strong before, his calm smile didn't seem very threatening. But now, Tianyang was like a supreme emperor. His entire body was filled with an incomparably sharp aura. It was as if the heavens could cut and tear it apart. What happened? Ling Yuhan was shocked. However, she was extremely confident in her martial spirit and martial skills. The true essence in Ling Yuhan's body was fully unleashed. In a flash, layers of frost condensed on the Jade Sea sword, and she slashed at Tianyang. Tianyang's SSSSS. Ents. The drifting cloud sword technique was ethereal and hard to find. After Tianyang had infused his own understanding of the sword Dao into it, the might of the drifting cloud sword technique had become even stronger than the original version. Was. Teat. SSS of herses. SHAV. S's. Peace. S's. The. In an instant, the frost sword, which was a low-grade dark rank, was broken. The frost sword aura couldn't even last for a second. It was instantly destroyed by this unfathomable sword technique. After destroying the frost sword aura, the flowing cloud sword technique did not diminish. It directly slashed at Ling Yuhan. It was even more ferocious, faster, and stronger than Ling Yuhan's. Oh no! Ling Yuhan's pupils constricted. She didn't expect that hers combined martial spirits and her strongest martial skills attack would be so easily shattered. It was as if it was a crushing blow. However, this crushing blow didn't shock her at all. It was as if Tianyang's success was supposed to be like this. The sword in her hand tried to slash out a sword aura to resist the flowing cloud sword technique. However, her entire body seemed to be filled with lead. It was extremely difficult to move. Seeing this, Ling Yuhan was naturally shocked. Then, she looked at the flowing cloud sword aura in front of her and suddenly understood. It wasn't that she was slow. It was that the flowing cloud sword aura was too fast. In front of this tyrannical sword aura, everything she did was meaningless. It could be said that just this flowing cloud sword aura alone was enough to kill her. The Lingyun sect's outer disciples, number 1. Everything happened in the time it took for a spark to fly off a piece of flint. The surrounding people didn't even have time to react when the terrifying flowing cloud sword chi arrived in front of Ling Yuhan. At this moment, Tianyang's vexed voice sounded from his side. I say, why don't you even know how to dodge? You even need me to wipe out this sword aura. She couldn't have been scared silly, right? Hey, such a good seedling can't be killed like this. Seeing the flowing cloud sword aura suddenly disappear in front of her, and seeing Tianyang walking towards her, Ling Yuhan felt as if she was in a dream. Tianyang actually withdrew such a terrifying sword aura, just like that. According to common sense, even if it was the sole strength of the clear chi stage, it shouldn't be able to directly withdraw it. It was not a change of target, but a direct disappearance. If it had been a change of target, in that kind of situation, Ling Yuhan would definitely have suffered some injuries. But now there was nothing. Her whole body looked as if it had just taken a bath. There wasn't even a scratch on her delicate skin. Seeing Tianyang walking towards her, Ling Yuhan felt a bit of panic that she had never felt before. She hurriedly retreated a few steps. Don't come over. Seeing Ling Yuhan's actions, Tianyang was a bit confused. What did he do? He looked at his feet, and then looked at Ling Yuhan. The distance between him and Ling Yuhan seemed to be a few body lengths. Even if he wanted to do something, he couldn't do it. No. Seeing Tianyang's confused look, Ling Yuhan's face suddenly turned red. She said, Anyway, don't come over. Seeing this, Tianyang was completely confused. He stood on the spot and then said, Don't tell me you're really stupid. No way. Hearing this, Ling Yuhan's originally red face turned even redder. Then she said, Looks like you're not stupid. That's good. Seeing Ling Yuhan's appearance, Tianyang also nodded. Such talent in the way of the sword was rare in this small, soaring cloud sect. If he missed this opportunity, it would be difficult to find someone with similar talent in the future. The soaring cloud sect was really lucky to be able to meet such a genius. Excuse me, may I ask who won this battle? Although the result was obvious, Elder Lin still walked forward, coughed twice, and asked. Hearing this, Ling Yuhan finally regained some consciousness. Then, she said straightforwardly, he won. Hearing this, Elder Lin nodded, then turned around and said, Soaring Cloud Sect, Intersect Disciple Assessment, Arena Battle, Tianyang came in first. Hearing this, the crowd was not shocked. That terrifying sword chi was something that even a cultivator who was half a step away from the clear chi realm would not be able to withstand. The only person who looked terrible was Bai Xiang, who had a grudge with Tianyang for a long time. However, Bai Lu was seriously injured, and he was even less than an ant in front of Tianyang. If Bai Xiang still wanted to provoke him, he would really be digging his own grave. Your talent is not bad, but your swordsmanship and way of the sword are still too immature. If you have time, you can come and find me. Tianyang chuckled softly, then turned around and left the sex assessment venue. Chapter 60. With regard to Ling Yuhan, Tianyang was also somewhat eager to hunt. Of course, it was only a little. Although Ling Yuhan's talent was good, she was still a piece of unpolished jade. Unpolished jade needed to be polished to become a dazzling and truly good jade. Obviously, the Soaring Cloud sect could not do that. Tianyang, with his cultivation realm as the Tianji Sword Emperor could easily do that. However, Tianyang had traversed the continent and had seen countless sword geniuses. However, in his previous life, Tianyang was all alone. Not to mention disciples, he did not even have a wife. Now that he thought about it, Tianyang could only smile. Although he had traversed the continent and was invincible in his previous life, other than cultivation, he only had the Tian Shao sword as his companion. Thinking about it this way, he was a little lonely. Therefore, Tianyang said those words to Ling Yuhan. However, whether Ling Yuhan accepted it or not was not within his consideration. If she accepted it, it was naturally good. If she did not accept it, it was also up to her. The Tianji Sword Emperor was an emperor at the peak of the heavenly ascension realm. Even if Ling Yuhan's talent in the way of the sword was really tyrannical before she grew up, she was nothing. Tianyang had seen many geniuses. Only geniuses who could truly grow up and become strong could be called true geniuses. The Soaring Cloud sect's inner-disciple assessment lasted for only a few days. On the first day, the first round's foundation assessment and the second round's martial art competition had been decided. Tianyang won all 5 rounds and had 50 points. In addition to the 3 extra points given to the first place, he had a total of 53 points. Ling Yuhan, on the other hand, was a little worse. In the last round, she lost to Tianyang and only had 42 points. The others, such as Lu Hanxi and Gu Xiu, were nothing. The gap between them and Tianyang and Ling Yuhan had become huge. After returning to his residence, Tianyang took out his steel sword and began to examine it carefully. Tianyang gently stroked the sword and felt the sensation from his fingertips. He sighed softly. Although the quality of this fine steel sword isn't bad, it's still too weak compared to a low-grade treasure weapon. When he had just been reborn, he had wanted to see the power of his sky, firmament sword martial spirit. So he had taken it from the sect's sacrificial ceremony. Although the quality wasn't bad, that was only for mortals. If a cultivator in the body refinement realm were to use it, even a cultivator at the 5th level of the body refinement realm would find it too weak. However, Tianyang had used this steel sword, which looked like a piece of scrap metal, all the way to the peak of the 9th level of the body refinement realm. With Tianyang's level of swordsmanship, he naturally knew how to reduce the wear and tear of his sword in battle. However, he could only reduce it. After numerous high-intensity battles, Tianyang's body was fine. However, there was still a problem with the fine steel sword. On the surface, there was nothing wrong with it. It was still as smooth as before. However, under the scan of Tianyang's soul power, it was difficult to hide the internal damage of the fine steel sword. Although it looked intact, in reality, the inside of the fine steel sword was already full of cracks after numerous battles. The cracks weren't big, but during the battle with Ling Yuhan, these cracks had increased a lot. Moreover, the number of cracks had also increased. The battle with Ling Yuhan wasn't a very intense battle for Tianyang. These cracks were mostly due to the collision between the fine steel sword and the blue sea sword. The blue sea sword was a low-grade treasure weapon. Its power far surpassed that of the fine steel sword. Therefore, one could imagine the damage that the fine steel sword received when it clashed with the blue sea sword. When Tianyang advanced to the clear chi state, the opponents he would encounter would also become more powerful. This fine steel sword obviously wouldn't be able to last until then. After the intersect examination is over, I must find a good sword. The sky sword will probably only be formed when I reach the profound grade, or even the earth grade. As for the sword of vital essence, I can use it occasionally. If I use it for a long time, it will only increase the consumption of my vital essence. Tianyang muttered to himself and put the fine steel sword back into its scabbard. This was the first sword he had encountered since his rebirth. For the sake of commemoration, Tianyang didn't want it to be scrapped just like that. To the Tianji Sword Emperor, swords were extremely precious. Although this fine steel sword was weak, it didn't stop him from attaching great importance to it. The night passed quietly. Tianyang had also completely integrated the 500 feet of perfect qi and blood into his body. At this moment, his physical strength had reached the pinnacle of the body refinement state. Moreover, with the powerful 9 refined dragon body, his physical strength would explode again in the midst of a fierce battle. It could be said that Tianyang had reached the pinnacle of the body refinement state. Since ancient times, no one could surpass him. The perfect body refinement technique. I actually managed to cultivate it before the demonic beast hunting assessment. Tianyang clenched his fists and felt the abundant power in his body as he chuckled. At this moment, his body was still as thin as before, and he didn't seem to have much strength. However, as long as he exploded, his physical strength, which was comparable to an earth dragon's, would show them what true physical strength was. It could be said that Tianyang's physical strength wasn't inferior to a demonic beast's at all. I wonder what level my physical attack power and defense power have reached. Tianyang chuckled. Then he looked at the sky. The sun was shining brightly. It was the time that Elder Lin had mentioned to them before they left. From morning to evening, it was a day of demonic beast hunting. Demonic beast hunting wasn't like fighting in the arena, where it was impossible to kill. Instead, it was hunting and fighting alongside demonic beasts that were naturally ferocious. If one wasn't careful, there was a risk of death. In the previous inner disciple assessment, there wasn't such an assessment. However, now that it was included, the Ling Yun sect's intention was obvious. They wanted to strengthen the inner disciple's strength. At the same time, they wanted to strengthen their own strength. Although Elder Lin, who had the strength of the clear chi state, would help watch the demonic beasts while they were hunting, even the wisest person would make mistakes. No matter how much the strong protected, there would still be times when they were careless. Therefore, even if the demonic beast hunting wasn't really training in the ferocious beast mountain range, it wasn't far from it. If one wasn't careful, there was a risk of death. Walking slowly on the main road of the Ling Yun sect, Tianyang didn't care much about the last and most difficult assessment of the inner disciple assessment. In his previous life, he had fought with almighties with the strength of the heaven ascension state, and they had even fought to the death. Why would he care about this insignificant demonic beast hunting? Chapter 61. The demonic beast hunt in the Ling Yun sect's inner disciple assessment is not for you to hunt demonic beasts in the Ling Yun sect's magical beast enclosure. The demonic beasts, they're all tamed by the Ling Yun sect. Even if they are ferocious, they will not be of any use to you. Therefore, the destination of this demonic beast hunt is the fearsome Beast Mountain Range, which is a few miles away. Elder Lin's voice spread throughout the entire sect's assessment field. Hearing this, many people's faces changed slightly. The first round of the basic assessment had eliminated 16 people, and the second round of the martial arts competition in the arena had allowed some people to understand their own strength. Some people who were too weak had voluntarily given up on the last round of the demonic beast hunt assessment. The remaining 10 people, except for Tianyang, were all in the top 10 of the outer disciples. It was unknown what method Bai Lu had used to heal his injuries. However, looking at Bai Lu's resentful eyes, Tianyang knew that this guy, who had been abused by him countless times in the fearsome Beast Mountain Range, might be blind enough to find trouble with him again. In the Ling Yun sect, I can't do anything to you. But in the fearsome Beast Mountain Range, the Ling Yun sect surveillance can't cover everything. Do you really think that I have a good temper? I haven't even completely devoured an upper yellow class martial soul yet. Tianyang sneered in his heart, then continued to listen to Elder Lin's speech. Other than the destination and the general rules, the rest was not very important. Rank 1 demonic beast, which is the body refinement realm demonic beast, is between level 1 and level 5 of the body refinement realm. Killing 1 demonic beast will give you 1 point. Killing 1 demonic beast above level 5 of the body refinement realm will give you 2 points. At the last moment, Elder Lin also explained the calculation method of the points. Hearing this, many people nodded slightly. They also understood that it was impossible for every body refinement realm demonic beast to be worth 1 point, regardless of its strength. The danger that powerful demonic beasts brought to the disciples of the Soaring Cloud sect was definitely much greater than that of the weaker demonic beasts. If these 2 types of demonic beasts only gave 1 point each, then wouldn't the person who killed the powerful demonic beast suffer great loss? Naturally, The Soaring Cloud sect would not allow him to create such a situation that greatly affected the fairness of the competition. Then, what about second-rank magical beasts? At this moment, Tianyong said with a smile. Upon hearing this, the surrounding air seemed to have solidified. Some people turned their heads and looked at the smiling Tianyong. A cold smile once again surfaced in their hearts. A rank 2 magical beast was equivalent to a clear Chi realm magical beast. A clear Chi realm magical beast was simply an invincible existence in the body refinement realm. Only a true super genius will be able to defeat a Chi illuminating realm cultivator while in the body refinement realm. Killing one was even more impossible. From her point of view, Tianyong was overestimating himself by saying that. Do you really think that you can be so arrogant just because you obtained first place in the arena? A rank 2 magical beast? Hearing Tianyong's question, Elder Lin was also stunned. Then he smiled and said, "If you kill a rank 2 magical beast, then as long as you have evidence, you will naturally receive more points. 20 points. As long as you kill a rank 2 magical beast, then you will receive 20 points." Hearing this, everyone was shocked. 20 points was equivalent to winning 2 consecutive rounds in the arena, or killing 10 demonic beasts whose strength was above the 5th level of the body refinement realm. Hearing this, Bailu's expression changed slightly. Then, he coldly looked at Tianyong and sneered in his heart. There is no danger in the arena at all. Furthermore, Ling Yuhan's strength is far from a rank 2 magical beast. Even if you defeat Ling Yuhan, facing a rank 2 magical beast, you can only escape with your life. How can you possibly kill it? A petty person intoxicated by a success. Bailu mocked. Hearing this, Tianyong's expression did not change. He did not even bother to respond. In his opinion, Bailu's words were just the helpless cries of a defeated person. However, Tianyong did not say anything. Ling Yuhan was displeased. A petty person intoxicated by his success? Bailu, you better explain it clearly. Although a rank 2 magical beast is equivalent to an enlightened Chi realm cultivator in terms of the true energy realm, due to its intelligence, its true strength is not equivalent to a human cultivator in the enlightened Chi realm. Who knows, Tianyong might really be able to kill a rank 2 magical beast by chance. However, can you, Bailu? Ling Yuhan glanced at Bailu, and a trace of disgust appeared in her eyes. The despicable methods that Bailu used to obtain cultivation resources had been spread by Zhang Daoran and the others at Bailu's side. Therefore, those people did not participate in the Soaring Cloud sect's interdisciple assessment this time. Just this point alone was enough for Ling Yuhan to loathe. Moreover, Bailu, a weakling, had turned around to mock Tianyong. This made her even more displeased. You. Seeing that Ling Yuhan actually spoke up for Tianyong, Bailu was directly stunned. He glared at Tianyong, and Bailu also shut his mouth. In his opinion, Tianyong would always be a good-for-nothing. However, Ling Yuhan was different. From the beginning, her tyrannical talent made him understand that. He absolutely could not surpass Ling Yuhan. Bailu lowered his head and no longer spoke. However, the burning resentment in the bottom of his eyes grew stronger and stronger. Just you wait. Tianyong, in the Fierce Beast Mountain Range, you're dead meat. The Fierce Beast Mountain Range was only a few miles away from the Soaring Cloud sect. This little distance was nothing to a cultivator at the aura illuminating stage. It was also nothing to a group of Soaring Cloud sect outer disciples at the body refining stage level 8 or 9. However, the dangers in the Fierce Beast Mountain Range also made many cultivators with similar strength shrink back. Although the outer area of the Fierce Beast Mountain Range was mostly filled with Class 1 demonic beasts, and Class 2 demonic beasts were in the deeper areas. However, there was no guarantee that a Class 2 demonic beast would run to the outer area on a whim to wreak havoc. The Scarlet Demon Python that almost wiped out the entire herb-collecting team of the 10,000 Medicines Pavilion last time was an example. The demonic beast hunting will continue from now until evening. At that time, regardless of whether you have achieved your goal or not, you must return. Standing at the entrance of the Fierce Beast Mountain Range, Elder Lin sternly instructed the outer disciples. Hearing this, everyone nodded. After all, there were countless dangers in the fierce beast mountain range. If they were not careful, they might lose their lives. They did not dare to disobey Elder Lin's words. After all, Elder Lin's strength was much stronger than theirs. Then you can all go in now. I won't enter the fierce beast mountain range. However, if any of you are in danger, I will try my best to rescue you, Elder Lin said. Hearing this, everyone roared in agreement and rushed in directly. Tianyang was no exception. Using the dragon's subduing step, his speed was instantly raised to the extreme. Coupled with the perfect body refining technique and the tyrannical strength of the earth dragon body, Tianyang's speed was much faster than those outer disciples. How is this possible? This guy's speed is actually so fast, Gushou said in shock as he looked at Tianyang in disbelief. However, he was only shocked for a moment before he also entered the forest. Chapter 62. A figure was shuttling through the fearsome Beast Mountain Range. This place was not the outer part of the fearsome Beast Mountain Range that Tianyang went to the last time he went there. It was a little further to the west, and it was also a little deeper. The deeper he went, the more powerful the demonic beasts that appeared in the fearsome Beast Mountain Range. For a group of soaring cloud sect outer disciples who were at body refining realm level 8 or 9, this was the best place for the assessment. I can't use the fine steel sword for now, but my physical strength is almost comparable to a real Class 2 demonic beast. Moreover, they are not ordinary Class 2 demonic beasts. Like the Scarlet Demon Python last time, if I don't use the Dragon Force, I can fight it head-on, Tianyang muttered. He did not throw the fine steel sword in his residence, but it was lying in the space bag. However, the fine steel sword was riddled with scars, and it was obviously not suitable to continue fighting. Therefore, Tianyang was empty-handed and did not have any weapons. However, as a sword emperor, even if he did not have a sword, he could still manifest his sword principle cultivation. The telepathic sword finger is a profound class, upper class finger technique. Its power is not bad, but it is different from the drifting cloud sword technique. This finger technique needs to be honed. Looking at his index finger that was covered with a layer of blue light, Tianyang chuckled. Since he had reached the supreme realm of the body, refining realm, Tianyang's physical strength was no longer an obstacle to his progress. On the contrary, Tianyang had now cultivated the first refining of the 9 tempering dragon body. His physical strength was almost the most powerful thing besides his sword principle, soul power, cultivation experience, and fighting instinct. Therefore, not only could he cultivate the dragon's subduing step, but he could also cultivate the telepathic sword finger. The telepathic sword finger was not of a very high grade, but it was a finger technique with a strong expansion. According to Tianyang's current cultivation, the profound class telepathic sword finger could erupt with the power of a profound class superior class finger. Moreover, this was one of the best finger techniques to cultivate in a short period of time. If he had chosen other finger techniques, he could not immediately use them to hunt demonic beasts. There's a magical beast up ahead. Not bad, not bad. It's actually a small snake. After taking a few steps, Tianyang stopped. With his spiritual strength, he could sense everything that happened in front of him. The snake-type magical beast that was almost identical to its surroundings was extremely conspicuous in Tianyang's senses. As for Tianyang, he naturally wouldn't passively wait for the magical beast to attack. His footsteps changed as he executed dragon, subduing steps. In an instant, Tianyang's figure disappeared from where he stood. Seeing that, the snake-type magical beast that was hiding on the ground was also stunned. At that moment, a ray of light exploded from Tianyang's finger. Telepathic sword finger. A blue finger beam pierced through all of the snake-type magical beast defenses, directly piercing through the hard snake scales that countless 8th-level body refinement realm cultivators were helpless against. This, without even seeing the person, its snake scales were directly pierced through. The snake-type magical beast also let out a sharp cry of pain. It also understood that it could no longer hide. In the bushes, an emerald green, snake-type magical beast rushed out and directly arrived in front of Tianyang. As for Tianyang, he could clearly see the shape of this magical beast. It was about 8 feet long and 1 foot wide. The snake's head was triangular and its entire body was emerald green. Very obviously, this was a rank 1 snake-type magical beast, the killer of the forest, the emerald viper. It's actually an emerald viper? Unfortunately, there's no dragon blood in my body, and I can't be suppressed by the dragon's aura. I can't use it to temper my earth dragon physique. So die. Tianyang chuckled lightly. His right index finger pointed out again. A blue ray of light exploded from his fingertip once again. Seeing this, the emerald viper that had its snake scales pierced by the blue ray of light screamed again. Its long body shuttled quickly between the bushes, trying to hide from Tianyang and avoid this attack. It couldn't understand how this mortal human, whose aura it couldn't sense at all, actually had such a powerful attack method. Escape? If I let you escape, I won't need to call myself the Tianji Sword Emperor. Tianyang snickered. The telepathic rhino sword finger, which could only move in a straight line, suddenly changed direction. Then it suddenly accelerated. In a short moment, it pierced through the emerald viper's snake scales and heart, killing it. From the time Tianyang discovered the emerald viper to the time the telepathic sword finger pierced through the emerald viper's heart, the time period was less than a minute. In such a snake-type magical beast, that countless body refinement realm cultivators trembled in fear died in Tianyang's hands just like that. 2 points are my hands. Tianyang directly cut off the emerald viper's head. He nodded slightly and threw it into the small space bag sponsored by the Soaring Cloud sect. In order to prove whether you really killed the magical beast, evidence such as the head was naturally indispensable. Then, next, let's continue the massacre. Tianyang licked his lips. Then, he used the dragon's subduing step and shuttled quickly through the forest. Rays of light from the telepathic sword finger flickered and shot out, ending the life of a level 1 magical beast. In Tianyang's small space bag, the heads of level 1 magical beasts were increasing rapidly. This fearsome beast mountain range is indeed the largest gathering place of magical beasts around. Panting as she looked at the corpses of magical beasts around her, Ling Yuhan wiped the sweat from her forehead. Just now, she had been surrounded by 3 demonic beasts. Furthermore, each of the demonic beasts was not weak. Even if she used the inferior grade treasure weapon, the Jade Sea Sword, she could only barely kill them. At this moment, Ling Yuhan had only killed 10 level 1 magical beasts. However, it's only been 10 minutes, and I've already obtained 15 points. No one can compare to this speed. Ling Yuhan smiled. She cut off the heads of the 3 magical beasts in front of her and threw them into the small space bag. Then, she circulated the inner yuan in her body and shook off the blood on her clothes and skin. Then, she continued to walk into the depths of the forest. A level 2 magical beast was worth 20 points. It was equivalent to 10 level 1 magical beasts whose strength had reached the 5th level of the body refinement realm. If she was lucky enough to kill a level 2 magical beast, she would definitely be able to secure the position of an inner sect disciple. Roar! At this moment, the moment Ling Yuhan stepped into the dense forest, a deafening roar came directly from beside her. Hearing this roar, Ling Yuhan's expression changed drastically. The aura in the roar also told her. This magical beast was definitely a level 2 magical beast. You still want to run in front of me? You little ice pattern wolf. Do you think you can overturn the heavens? I'm still lacking him out. If you don't cooperate, I'll have no choice but to kill you. At this moment, a young laughter came from afar. Then, in front of Ling Yuhan, an injured ice pattern wolf was continuously roaring and running for its life. Behind it, an extremely young figure was using a strange footwork. It looked like he was taking a stroll, but no matter how fast the ice pattern wolf ran, the young man could easily keep up with it. Looking at the shocking scene in front of her, Ling Yuhan spat out 2 words with difficulty. Chapter 63. Tianyang. Looking at the subversive scene before him, Ling Yuhan was completely dumbfounded. A level 2 magical beast. This ice pattern wolf was definitely a level 2 magical beast. The ice pattern wolf was born with mysterious patterns on its body, and on these patterns, there were traces of ice attribute energy. This ice attribute energy was the reason why the ice pattern wolf was named Ice. Because of the patterns on the ice pattern wolf's body, the ice pattern wolf's control of ice attribute vital essence was extremely strong. Countless tempered body cultivators who had ventured into the fearsome Beast Mountain range had died under the ice pattern wolf's claws. However, this magical beast that had caused countless tempered body cultivators to tremble in fear was actually being chased and beaten by Tianyang. Looking at the situation, this ice pattern wolf could only passively take the beating and did not even dare to retaliate. Tianyang, on the other hand, was very relaxed as he followed behind it and attacked from time to time. A level 2 magical beast was equivalent to a human cultivator in the aura illuminating realm. Tianyang, on the other hand, was beating a human cultivator in the aura illuminating realm. It's Ling Yuhan. At this moment, Tianyang seemed to have just realized that Ling Yuhan was standing at the side, stunned. He turned around and laughed. How about it? I thought about it last time. Roar. At this moment, the ice pattern wolf seemed to have realized that the terrifying human behind it was distracted. It roared angrily and stopped running. The wolf clan was proud. The ice pattern wolf was the model of pride in the wolf clan. It was born with a strong, innate talent, and it could not accept that it was being beaten by a human who was weaker than it. Be careful. Before Ling Yuhan could hear Tianyang's words clearly, she saw the ice pattern wolf's crazy appearance behind Tianyang. Streaks of vital essence condensed on the ice pattern wolf's claws and even solidified into solid ice. A bone-chilling chill exploded. The strange patterns on the animal's skin also emitted a dazzling, icy blue light. The next moment, the ice pattern wolf howled and pounced towards Tianyang. According to the strength of the wolf claw, if Tianyang was hit by the claw, he would definitely be severely injured, if not killed. Do you really think I can't deal with you? It's such a good thing to be my mount, yet you still want to court death. Since that's the case, let's do as you wish. In the face of the ice pattern wolf's dying counterattack, Tianyang merely glanced at it and pointed his finger. The finger radiance, which carried a strong sword aura, rushed out of Tianyang's finger and hit the ice pattern wolf's body in an instant. Head of copper, bones of iron, and waist of tofu. This was the weakness of all wolf clan beasts. The ice pattern wolf's attack was considered extremely careful, only using its hard head and sharp claws to face Tianyang. Unfortunately, the ice pattern wolf did not meet an ordinary peak body refinement realm level 9 cultivator, but Tianyang, who had been reborn 10,000 years ago and had reached the unparalleled body refinement realm. The finger radiance, which carried a majestic amount of vital essence, directly pierced through the ice pattern wolf's protective vital essence. Then, in a short period of time, the finger radiance shattered the ice pattern wolf's attack and directly pierced through its heart. Fresh blood spurted out, and the ice pattern wolf's eyes widened. It could not imagine how this human youth, who did not have much of an attack previously, could actually explode with a powerful attack that rendered all its defenses and even attacks useless. Furthermore, his hard head was of no use at all. The finger beam, which should have been moving in a straight line, was actually able to turn under Tianyang's control. Boom! The ice pattern wolf's huge body fell to the ground with a loud thud. Fresh blood spurted out, but it could not get within 1 foot of Tianyang. Ling Yuhan, who was at the side, saw Tianyang kill the ice pattern wolf in an instant. Her expression changed drastically, and a deep sense of fear rose in her heart. You actually killed it? This is a level 2 magical beast, the ice pattern wolf. Ling Yuhan's hands trembled slightly as she spoke with a pale face. Hearing this, Tianyang tilted his head in confusion. So what? Could it be that this ice pattern wolf has some terrifying background? Can I even kill it? No. How did you do it? As the ice pattern wolf's life gradually faded away, Ling Yuhan adjusted her expression and said in shock, a level 2 magical beast was equivalent to a cultivator in the aura illuminating realm. Regardless of whether it was in terms of attack or defense, it was extremely terrifying. To a cultivator in the body refinement realm, it was almost invincible. And Tianyang, right in front of Ling Yuhan, killed the ice pattern wolf with just a finger. The ice pattern wolf's powerful defense and attack did not even have the chance to display its strength before it was killed by Tianyang. This level of strength was simply too terrifying. This ice pattern wolf's ability is not bad. Its attack, defense, and speed are very balanced. However, to kill it is not too difficult, Tianyang said as he looked at Ling Yuhan. Hearing this, Ling Yuhan was completely dumbfounded. The ice pattern wolf was a level 2 magical beast. Tianyang actually said that it was not difficult to kill it. A cultivator in the body refinement realm said that it was not difficult to kill a level 2 magical beast. With your ability, you should be able to kill this ice pattern wolf. However, you might have the ability, but it would be difficult to maximize your ability. Tianyang smiled. Ling Yuhan's body shook and she fell in a deep thought. Tianyang walked forward and chopped off the ice pattern wolf's head. Since he could not use it as a mount, he would use it as a point. Although these 20 points were not much to Tianyang, who had killed countless level 1 magical beasts, it was not much. However, with the points in front of him, how could he not take them? Take your time to think about it. I have something to do, so I'll take my leave first. Seeing Ling Yuhan in deep thought, Tianyang smiled gently and walked into the depths of the forest. Hearing this, Ling Yuhan suddenly woke up from her deep thoughts. Looking at Tianyang's back view, she hurriedly shouted, "Wait, don't go yet. Damn it, if that useless Tianyang had not broken my right fist, I would not have been forced into such a sorry state by this magical beast." Bai Lu said angrily as he killed a magical beast. At this moment, in order to kill this magical beast, Bai Lu had even used his martial soul. The purple python circled behind Bai Lu, but it was no longer as powerful as when it was fighting Tianyang. It was not only because it had used up too much of its energy, but more importantly, because its martial soul origin had been devoured by Tianyang. However, I have invited a low-grade weapon from my family that is not inferior to Ling Yuhan's Jade Sea Sword. Furthermore, the power of the clan elder was injected into it. I don't believe that Tianyang will be able to survive against the power of the Radiant Chi realm. After roaring angrily, Bai Lu chopped off the magical beast's head and planned to continue killing magical beasts. However, a laugh came from the side. Chapter 64. Tianyang. Bai Lu's expression changed as he stared at Tianyang, who had just walked out of the forest. He stared at Tianyang. As for Tianyang, he smiled faintly and looked at Bai Lu with a subtle smile on his face. He had originally planned to get rid of him in the fearsome Beast Mountain range, but he hadn't expected to run into him so soon. Forget it. He might as well let Bai Lu die now. Why are you here? Bai Lu suddenly had a bad feeling when he saw the smile on Tianyang's face. It seemed that Tianyang hadn't been looking for him deliberately, but he had still run into him. Bai Lu's expression turned hideous when he thought of his bare left wrist. It was all because of Tianyang. Otherwise, how could he have lost his left hand? What does it have to do with you that I'm here? Tianyang chuckled. At that moment, Ling Yuhan, who had noticed that Tianyang had stopped, walked out curiously. Then, she saw Bai Lu, who had a ferocious look on his face. Bai Lu. Ling Yuhan's expression darkened when she saw Bai Lu. She naturally wouldn't be as good-natured as she was when she faced Tianyang. Ling Yuhan. Bai Lu didn't realize that his voice was trembling as he stared in disbelief at Ling Yuhan, who had walked out from behind Tianyang. You don't have to do anything. This is between me and him. Tianyang smiled when he saw Bai Lu's horrified expression. He took a small step forward and sealed off all of Bai Lu's escape routes by Tianyang. No matter where Bai Lu ran, Tianyang was confident that he could use the dragon's subduing step to kill him immediately. That's right, Ling Yuhan. This is between me and Tianyang. Therefore, I hope that you won't do anything. Bai Lu was taken aback when he heard Tianyang's words. He hadn't expected that Tianyang would ask Ling Yuhan not to do anything. Bai Lu was extremely wary of Ling Yuhan's strength. If Ling Yuhan made a move, Bai Lu wouldn't be able to take Tianyang's life even if he had a low-grade, bejeweled weapon. However, Tianyang was actually so stupid as to ask Ling Yuhan to stand aside. Grudge. Ling Yuhan was taken aback when she heard this. Then, her expression changed. Her sharp senses allowed her to sense the murderous aura that had suddenly filled the surroundings. The murderous aura was coming from Bai Lu's body, but an even more terrifying killing intent was coming from Tianyang's body. The grudge between the two of them was definitely not just an ordinary grudge. Furthermore, it was a life and death grudge. Tianyang, since enemies are bound to meet on a narrow road, I'll deal with you now. Die for me. Seeing Ling Yuhan take a few steps back, Bai Lu's expression became even more ferocious. He used his footwork and arrived in front of Tianyang in an instant. Violet Python Stab. Martial Spirit. Violet Python. In just the first round, Bai Lu didn't care about the consumption of his soul power and directly used his high-grade yellow martial spirit. Tianyang only had a low-grade yellow martial spirit. Bai Lu was extremely confident. Even if Tianyang's martial strength was stronger than his, in front of his high-grade yellow martial spirit, Tianyang would definitely be suppressed. Tianyang would definitely be suppressed and slowed down for a moment. Violet Python Stab? You only know this move? However, what Bai Lu didn't expect was that Tianyang only chuckled. He suddenly stretched out his index finger and pointed at Bai Lu, who was flying towards him. A sharp ray of light shot out from Tianyang's fingertip and blasted towards Bai Lu's face. How is this possible? This guy, how can he use such a sharp finger technique? Not good. Violet Python attack. Sensing the power of the telepathic finger sword, Bai Lu's expression changed drastically. The purple python coiling behind him opened its bloody mouth and hissed before charging toward the telepathic finger sword. The violet python stab and the telepathic finger sword collided. Bang! A huge explosion erupted from the center of the battle. Seeing this, Bai Lu's expression changed greatly. His violet python stab was actually unable to do anything to Tianyang's finger. Since that's the case, don't blame me. Raging Flame Fist. Bai Lu shouted angrily. The true yuan in his body surged violently. The reddish-yellow true yuan condensed on his fist and burned with a layer of powerful flames. I even took care of Xiao Hao's flame martial spirit. Do you think I'm afraid of your raging flame fist? Tianyang chuckled. He moved his feet and used the dragon subduing step. The raging flame fist that had firmly locked onto Tianyang's body was thrown into chaos because of this step and lost control. Seeing this, Bai Lu's expression suddenly became gloomy. He roared again, "Kill!" Tong Ming Fist. The raging flame fist and the Tong Ming Fist collided. Their true yuan intertwined, entangled, and collided. Bai Lu was shocked to find that his raging flame fist had no effect on Tianyang's body. It was as if the flames had turned into trash. Tianyang smiled slightly. Tong Ming Fist, 10 echoes, 10 layers of hidden energy. Bang, bang, bang. In an instant, hidden energy burst out from Bai Lu's body. Bai Lu's face suddenly became distorted. He did not expect Bai Lu to have such a method. A fist technique that could contain hidden force was definitely not a weak technique. Tianyang's secrets were also not small. Since that's the case, don't blame me for being ruthless. Third Elder, lend me your strength. Bastard Tianyang die. He took out his low-grade artifact. Bai Lu's true yuan surged. His aura broke through the shackles of the 8th level of the body refining realm and reached the 9th level of the body refining realm. Bai Lu also started to laugh maniacally. In his opinion, Tianyang only had one outcome after being attacked by an illuminating Qi realm cultivator. That was death. Moreover, the low-grade artifact contained a powerful true yuan of the 3rd level of the illuminating Qi realm. Compared to the 1st level of the illuminating Qi realm, his strength was much stronger. Tianyang was able to kill the ice pattern wolf, which proved his strength. However, this did not mean that he could withstand the full force attack of an illuminating Qi realm cultivator. After all, An illuminating Chi realm cultivator could kill countless ninth-level body, refining realm cultivators with a flip of their hand. Despicable and shameless. Seeing this, Ling Yuhan's face changed. She shouted angrily and circulated the true yuan in her body. She was about to say Bai Lu. At this moment, Tianyang's faint laughter came from the side. And here I was wondering what you were relying on. I didn't expect it to be a full-force attack of an illuminating Chi realm cultivator stored in a low-grade artifact. Since when did you have the misconception that an illuminating Chi realm cultivator could kill me? Tianyang smiled faintly and did not react. He just stood there. At this moment, a ray of light shot out from the low-grade artifact. No, Ling Yuhan shouted. The jade sea sword appeared in her hand. However, it was too late. At this moment, the full-force attack of an illuminating Chi realm cultivator had already landed on Tianyang's chest. Oof, you're still talking big before you die. Trash, you're indeed trash. Bai Lu looked at Tianyang in the light and sneered. He ignored the attack that had exploded into a ball of white light. Then, he looked towards Ling Yuhan, and a burning desire flashed through his eyes. Now, there's only me and Senior Ling Yuhan here. Why don't we? Then, Bai Lu chuckled and walked towards Ling Yuhan. Ling Yuhan was a rare beauty in the outer sect of the Soaring Cloud sect. Coupled with her powerful strength, she was the goddess in the hearts of many outer sect disciples. Bai Lu was no exception, and now, Ling Yuhan was standing in front of him. In his low-grade artifact, there was a bit of illuminating Chi realm cultivator's true yuan. Wasn't this a great opportunity? Ling Yuhan's face turned cold. She channeled the true yuan in her body. She was afraid. The true yuan of the illuminating Chi realm cultivator was enough to allow Bai Lu to do whatever he wanted. If Bai Lu really wanted to do something, would she have the strength to resist? At this moment, a ray of light shot out from the light of the illuminating Chi realm cultivator's attack. Big words, trash. You actually took advantage of the situation and used your strength to bully the weak. I'm afraid that only someone like you would say such words. A chuckle came from the light. Tianyang stepped out of the light. At this moment, Bai Lu's eyes were filled with fear. Trembling, Tianyang was not dead. Chapter 65. How could you not die? Bai Lu's pupils constricted to the size of needles as he stared at Tianyang. Not even his robes were damaged. He stared at Tianyang. That was an attack from a third-stage Bright Chi realm cultivator. Even if it was Bai Lu himself, encountering an attack of this level, only death would await him. They had all seen with their own eyes how that terrifying attack had landed on Tianyang's chest. Logically speaking, it was impossible for Tianyang to survive that attack. Even if his cultivation had reached the peak of the 9th stage of the body refinement realm, it was still impossible. However, the Tianyang standing before them had completely overturned Bai Lu's beliefs. Their gazes towards Tianyang changed from anger and jealousy to fear, and they began to tremble. To be able to survive the full power attack of a third-stage Bright Chi realm cultivator, then for such a person to kill Bai Lu, wouldn't it be as easy as killing a little chick? In fact, even Tianyang himself was surprised. Although he had dared to let an attack from a third-stage Bright Chi realm cultivator land on his body, he must have had something to rely on. However, he had never imagined that before he could even use his defensive measures, his powerful physique would be able to completely block the attack. Blood Chi, 500 feet. Physique, Earth Dragon Body. Just the former alone was enough to allow Tianyang's physical strength to stand out from the crowd. Coupled with the Earth Dragon Body, a low-grade Heaven-class martial skill, he had cultivated the 9 refined Dragon Body. Tianyang would even dare to compete with a cultivator at the 1st or 2nd stage of the Bright Chi realm in terms of physical strength. Although the attack from a 3rd stage Bright Chi realm cultivator was powerful, it was only a single attack. It was far from its true power. Therefore, Tianyang did not even use his true yuan to defend himself. He had relied on his physical strength to block the attack that was powerful enough to kill any cultivator in the body refinement realm. The strength of his physical body is truly beyond my expectations. Tianyang chuckled. Then, He looked at Bai Lu, who was trembling all over, and the corners of his mouth curled up slightly. Since Bai Lu's greatest trump card couldn't even injure him, then now it was Tianyang's turn. Not good. Run. The moment Tianyang's expression changed, Bai Lu immediately realized that something was wrong. He hurriedly turned around and pushed the true origin in his body to the limit. Although the murderous intent in Tianyang's eyes wasn't strong, it was extremely firm. If it was at any other time, Bai Lu, who'd always looked down on Tianyang, would naturally not take this killing intent seriously. However, Tianyang possessed the strength to crush him at any moment now. If he still didn't care, then there was only one ending for him: death. Trying to run? Seeing that Bai Lu had pushed his true origin to the limit and was trying to escape, Tianyang curled his lips and used the dragon's subduing step. In the blink of an eye, Tianyang's speed had reached Bai Lu's level. In the next second, his speed doubled again. In a few breaths' time, Tianyang had arrived beside Bai Lu. Bai Lu's face turned pale when he saw Tianyang suddenly appear beside him. He hardened his heart and understood that he couldn't surpass Tianyang. The true origin in his body began to surge wildly. It was as if he knew that there was no way he could outrun Tianyang. So he decided to attack with all his might. Tianyang, even if I die, I'll drag you down with me. Raging flame billows. Bai Lu roared. His true origin was covered in wisps of black chi. Raging flames burned on Bai Lu's fist. At that moment, Tianyang lost his patience to continue playing. He smiled faintly and took out his steel sword from his space bag. Then, Tianyang opened his mouth and said a few words. Flowing Cloud Sword Technique. The Flowing Cloud Sword Technique was tyrannical and ethereal. In an instant, it completely shattered Bai Lu's crazy attack. The raging flame billows had reached the low-grade, profound rank. It was an existence that body refinement stage cultivators could only look up to. However, in front of the Tianji Sword Emperor, not to mention the low-grade profound rank, even the low-grade heaven rank would have the same ending. Boom! The crazily burning, raging flame billows was completely extinguished by the sword. Along with it, Bai Lu's life force was extinguished. In an instant, blood spurted wildly. Bai Lu's chest was pierced by a bowl-sized sword wound. His pupils gradually became lax, and his life force was rapidly draining away. Before he died, Bai Lu suddenly realized something. Regardless of whether he resisted or not, from the moment he went against Tianyang, there was only one ending for him. However, there was no medicine for regret in this world. Bai Lu could only die with boundless regret. The purple python martial soul should have dissipated along with its master's death. However, how could Tianyang let go of such a great nourishment? The refined steel soared with the sky cloud, soared as its soul suddenly flew out. In an instant, Tianyang struck the martial soul's origin that ordinary people couldn't capture. In the next moment, the purple python martial soul that had been partially devoured by the sky cloud sword had completely become nourishment for the sky cloud sword. With a wave of his hand, the refined steel sword returned to Tianyang's hand. Tianyang could clearly feel it. The gap between the sky cloud sword and the high-grade yellow rank martial soul was greatly shortened. You killed him. At this moment, a shocked voice came from the side. Hearing this, Tianyang was stunned. Then, he revealed a trace of a bitter smile. He had played to his heart's content and had forgotten that there was a good seedling of the sword Tao standing beside him. Those who kill will be killed by others. When he used the low-grade artifact and executed the aura illumination stage attack, his ending was already decided. Tianyang said with a calm tone, which expert's path wasn't covered with piles of bones. If one had to hesitate and grumble when killing a person, then one could forget about reaching the peak of the martial Tao. No, this is the Ling Yun sect's inner disciple examination. If you killed him, wouldn't that mean that Elder Lin would also know? Killing a sect disciple is a great sin, Ling Yuhan said with incomparable panic. She completely didn't realize that she had completely put herself in Tianyang's shoes and started to worry for him. Hearing Ling Yuhan's words, Tianyang was stunned. Then he smiled and said, "Don't worry, Elder Lin won't be able to discover me. Even if the soul of the peak of the Heaven Ascension stage was not even a 10,000th of its peak state, it was still not something that a mere aura illumination stage cultivator could discover. Hearing this, Ling Yuhan, who should have been suspicious, didn't know why she nodded her head. After seeing Tianyang take Bai Lu's space bag and continue to walk into the depths of the dense forest, Ling Yuhan didn't know why, but she followed him again. A day's time passed very quickly. Except for Bai Lu, everyone had arrived outside the ferocious Beast Mountain range. Chapter 66. Other than Bai Lu, everyone else is here, Elder Lin said in a deep voice as he looked at the crowd. Other than Tianyang and Ling Yuhan, everyone was shocked when they heard that. Then, they looked at the crowd in disbelief. Tianyang, Ling Yuhan, Gu Xiao, and Lu Hanqi were all there. Even those who were only at the beginning of level 8 body refinement realm were there. However, there was only one person missing. Bai Lu, who was at the peak of level 8 body refinement realm and was considered above average among the crowd. Elder, why is Bai Lu missing? Gu Xiao's face changed and his body trembled. He thought of a terrifying possibility, but he was uncertain and asked Elder Lin. Elder Lin's face darkened when he heard that. That's right. It's just as you think. Bai Lu, he's dead. Moreover, he died in the depths of the fearsome Beast Mountain range. He might have encountered a powerful Class 2 demonic beast. In an instant, a huge hole was opened in his chest by a terrifying attack. Even I can't save him from such an injury. Elder Lin sighed. Everyone was horrified when they heard that. They looked at the peaceful, fearsome Beast Mountain range behind them with lingering fear. Even a person like Bai Lu died in the fearsome Beast Mountain range. It could be seen that the fearsome Beast Mountain range was extremely dangerous. However, the hunting of demonic beasts is a life and death battle. Winning and losing, life and death are common. You don't have to worry too much. At least, with your strength, as long as you don't encounter any powerful Class 2 demonic beasts, you'll be able to gain some experience in the outer area of the fearsome Beast Mountain range. Elder Lin comforted them with a sympathetic look on his face. Bai Lu was a decent genius, but such a genius had died in the fearsome Beast Mountain range. It was a huge loss to the Lingyun sect. Now, starting from the last place in the arena, take out your space bag and report the number of points you have, Elder Lin said. Hearing that, the person who was called out respectfully nodded and took out his interspatial bag. He felt that his harvest this time was not bad. Although he might not be able to enter the inner sect, at least he would not be last. Body Refinement Realm Level 1 to Level 5, 9, Level 5 to Level 9, for a total of 17 points. With a sweep of his soul power, Elder Lin saw the contents of the interspatial bag clearly. Hearing this, some people's expressions didn't change. It was only 17 points. For them, it was easy to get. However, the expressions of some of the people at the bottom changed slightly. They could see the points themselves. Who would have thought that this person, who was only at the initial stage of the 8th level of the body refinement stage, would actually be able to kill so many demonic beasts in a single day? Next, the second one. Elder Lin said. Naturally, he could not give the interspatial bag to that person. After throwing the heads of the demonic beasts out, he kept them in his own interspatial bag. After all, spatial treasures were extremely precious. If they were accidentally lost, the Lingyun sect would not be able to bear such a loss. Next, from the last place to the 6th place, they all went up to count the number of demonic beast heads. The person with the highest score was the person at the 6th place from the bottom, which was the person at the 4th place. He had killed 15 weak rank 1 demonic beasts and 10 strong rank 1 demonic beasts. A total of 35 points surprised them. Gu Xiao, who looked like an ordinary person, was actually so good at killing demonic beasts. The person with the lowest score only killed 3 strong rank 1 demonic beasts and 4 weak rank 1 demonic beasts, which only gave him 10 points. Next, 3rd place, Lu Hanqi. Elder Lin said with a hint of approval in his eyes. Hearing this, Lu Hanqi also raised her head and smiled. Her eyes were shining with confidence. Even if she lost to Ling Yuhan in the arena and indirectly lost to Tianyang, she was still extremely confident in her own strength. Her palms slapped on the interspatial bag, and the heads of the demonic beasts were released one by one. In an instant, a strong smell of blood assaulted their nostrils. When the crowd saw this, they were slightly stunned. Then, their stunned expressions quickly turned into great shock. With such a strong smell of blood, exactly how many demonic beasts did Lu Hanqi kill? Furthermore, on top of the small mountain of demonic beast heads, there was a wolf head. It was emitting an incomparably terrifying pressure. Rank 2 demonic beast. Seeing the wolf head, Elder Lin was also shocked. Then he said, "You're actually able to kill a rank 2 demonic beast. Your strength is not bad. If I'm not mistaken, this rank 2 demonic beast is the rare woodwind wolf, right?" "That's right," Lu Hanqi said respectfully. Seeing this, Gu Xiao, who had obtained 35 points, sighed with a gloomy expression. A rank 2 demonic beast was equivalent to 20 rank 1 demonic beasts or 10 rank 1 demonic beasts. This rank 2 demonic beast was equivalent to 10 rank 1 demonic beasts that he had risked his life to kill, in addition to the other demonic beasts that Lu Hanqi had killed. Once again, he was unable to defeat Lu Hanqi. However, the body refinement realm is only the beginning of the martial path. Right now, I'm unable to defeat you. But in the future, when I enter the inner sect, I'll definitely defeat you. Gu Xiao raised his head and looked at Lu Hanqi with a burning gaze. At this moment, Elder Lin had also finished counting Lu Hanqi's points. A woodwind wolf had consumed a large amount of Lu Hanqi's energy. As for the other demonic beasts, she had killed very few. However, no matter how few demonic beasts she had killed, it was impossible for her to not have many points with the woodwind wolf. In total, she had killed 10 rank 1 demonic beasts, 8 rank 1 demonic beasts, and 1 rank 2 demonic beast, woodwind wolf. In total, she had obtained 46 points. Next, Ling Yuhan. After having Lu Hanqi withdraw, Elder Lin called out the former number 1. When Ling Yuhan heard this, she smiled at Tianyang and walked forward. Without saying anything, she opened the spatial bag. There was no smell of blood, but the number of demonic beast heads was more than anyone else's. Seeing this, everyone's pupils shrank. They looked at the 3 demonic beast heads at the top of the pile in disbelief. These heads were the same as the woodwind wolf's head from before. They emitted an extremely powerful aura. The 3 demonic beasts were not inferior to the woodwind wolf that Lu Hanqi had killed. In fact, they even surpassed it. 3 rank 2 demonic beasts. Seeing this, even Elder Lin, who was at the aura illuminating stage, couldn't help but be moved. As expected of the number 1 in the outer sect, I'm afraid the title of the demonic beast hunting champion will be yours. Hearing this, Ling Yuhan smiled and said, "Not necessarily. 3 rank 2 demonic beasts, 10 rank 1 demonic beasts, and 2 rank 2 demonic beasts. This actually obtained 82 points. It's only a little bit away from the highest record in history, 85 points." Elder Lin said in shock as he looked at the pile of demonic beast heads in shock. Hearing this, everyone was shocked. At this moment, Ling Yuhan smiled and retreated. She then poked Tianyang's back. As for Tianyang, he smiled helplessly and walked over. "Last one, Tianyang," Elder Lin said after taking a deep look at Ling Yuhan. At this moment, Tianyang patted the spatial bag in his hand. A black shadow immediately covered Elder Lin's line of sight. It was really like a small mountain. Chapter 67. The eyes of the magical beasts were wide open, as if they had died with everlasting regret. The conical pile of magical beasts, which was more than 5 meters tall and 5 meters wide, caused everyone to fall into a daze. There were at least 30 magical beasts in this pile. What was Tianyang's cultivation level? Bai Lu was dead, so naturally, no one would mock him anymore. However, some people couldn't help but speculate when they saw this scene. Could it be that Tianyang had only killed low-level magical beasts that were only worth 1 point? Otherwise, it was impossible for him to kill so many of them. This is impossible. Seeing the 5 rank 2 demonic beasts at the very top, Even Elder Lin was dumbfounded. 5 second-level magical beasts. When Tianyong asked how many points the second-level magical beasts were worth, Elder Lin didn't think much of it and thought that Tianyong had asked out of curiosity. He didn't expect Tianyong to really have the ability to kill second-level magical beasts. If the strength of the 5 second-level magical beasts wasn't just at the second level, then even Elder Lin would have a hard time killing all of them. It was hard to imagine how Tianyong, who was only in the tempered body state, could kill so many second-level magical beasts. At the scene, only Ling Yuhan knew what Tianyong was like. His incomparably tyrannical physical strength was something that even magical beasts could not compare with. In addition to his powerful swordsmanship, even if he faced a rank 2 magical beast, Tianyong, he would not be able to unleash more than 5 sword strikes. This was because no matter how strong a Class 2 magical beast was, it would still die in less than 5 strikes. However, a rank 2 magical beast was still a challenge for Heavenly Sunday. The reason why he was able to kill so many magical beasts other than rank 2 magical beasts was thanks to Bai Lu, whose soul had already returned to the underworld. Bai Lu had killed more than a dozen first-level magical beasts and had originally had hopes of entering the inner sect. Unfortunately, he had met Tianyong. At least 20 points had all fallen into Tianyong's hands, and they had all gone to someone else. Magical beasts of the second rank, 5. Magical beasts of the first rank, 18. Magical beasts of the first rank, 10. It was exactly the same as other people's situation where the stronger they were, the fewer they had killed. In Tianyong, even the weakest level 1 magical beast had only been killed 10 of them. A total of 146 points. 146. Compared to Gu Xiao, who was originally ranked 3rd, he had more than 100 points. The Soaring Cloud sect's record had also been broken by Tianyong. Perhaps even an inner disciple wouldn't be able to suppress his strength and participate in the inner disciple examination. It was impossible for him to have such a result. However, no one knew that when Tianyong killed the demonic beasts and realized that the ultra-small space bag could no longer hold them, he gave some to Ling Yuhan. The demonic beasts that Ling Yuhan had killed were at most 60 points. However, because of Tianyong, her points had increased by 24. If these 24 points were added, then Tianyong had not just broken the record. Instead, he had broken twice the record. Not bad, not bad. Not bad at all. Looking at Tianyong, who was calmly walking back to his original position, even Elder Lin couldn't help but praise him 3 times. 146 points. This kind of result could be considered a legend in the entire Soaring Cloud sect. Tianyong, the original trash, had actually created such a legend. This also shocked countless people. Since the hunting of the demonic beasts has ended, the Soaring Cloud sect's inner disciple examination has also ended. Elder Lin stroked his beard and smiled. Hearing this, some people's faces turned gloomy. In other words, they, who had performed poorly in the arena and the demonic beast's hunting, could only bid farewell to the inner disciple. The person with the highest score is naturally Tianyong, 146 points. Together with the 53 points from the arena, he has a total of 199 points. Elder Lin laughed heartily. Hearing that, the crowd turned their complicated gazes toward Tianyong. This Tianyong seemed to have really endured for many years. Now that he had risen up, it had only been 1 or 2 months, and he had already stepped on these original outer disciple geniuses. Second is Ling Yuhan. Third is Lu Hanqi. Fourth is Gu Xiao. Fifth is Wu Mingshi. The 5 disciples who will enter the inner disciple examination have already been decided. The remaining disciples, don't be discouraged. In the coming year, there will still be an inner disciple examination. You can also fight in the coming year. Elder Lin said. Hearing this, the people who had been eliminated all had their fighting spirit ignited. They looked at Tianyong and the others. These people were the targets that they wanted to catch up with. As for Ling Yuhan and the others, after hearing these words, they also revealed traces of smiles. From today onwards, they were no longer outer disciples of the Soaring Cloud sect. Instead, they were inner disciples of the Soaring Cloud sect, who could enjoy better cultivation resources. Tomorrow is the day that you will enter the inner disciple. Tonight, you can prepare yourselves or interact with each other. When you enter the inner disciple, you will no longer be dazzling geniuses. Instead, you will be new disciples among the inner disciples. The path of martial arts is like sailing against the current. If you want to become an emperor in martial arts, you must work hard in your cultivation. Elder Lin shouted. Hearing this, the 5 of them nodded. What he said made sense. Even the Tianji Sword Emperor agreed with what he said. However, it seemed to be too common. No matter what, it was the truth. That's all then. Dismissed. Elder Lin said with a smile. I have lived here for a few years. I never thought that there would be a day where I would move out. After returning to his remote residence, Tianyang sighed emotionally. Although he was the Tianji Sword Emperor, after merging with the soul of the previous Tianyang, he also inherited all of the previous Tianyang's experiences. Although he would not be affected by the previous Tianyang, he still had some feelings for this house that he had lived in for many years. I heard that the inner disciple has much more cultivation resources than the outer disciple. Most of the outer disciple are cultivators of the temper body state. The spirit stones that they receive every month are only useful after they reach the illuminating chi state. Tianyang chuckled as he tossed a few spirit stones that he had obtained from the outer disciple cultivation hall. Not only could the spirit stones be used for cultivation, but they were also much better than gold coins as currency. If the medicinal herbs that Tianyang had bought were to be purchased with gold coins, they would have cost at least a few $100,000. They could kill someone with just that amount of money. If he used the spirit stones, he would only need a few spirit stones to purchase the medicinal herbs and the elixir cauldron. After entering the inner disciple cultivation hall, make some preparations to reach the illuminating chi state. Tianyang's eyes flickered for a moment before he smiled. Then, he stepped into the courtyard and began to cultivate. Chapter 68. Soaring Cloud Sect, Inner Sect. As the inner sect, this was naturally a place that countless outer sect disciples dreamed of coming to. At this moment, Tianyang, Ling Yuhan, Lu Hanxi, and the other 4 followed Elder Lin and arrived at the Soaring Cloud Sect's intersect mountain gate. This mountain gate is pretty well done. After passing through the mountain gate, Tianyang nodded slightly. Although there was no aura of array formation within, from an aesthetic point of view, the domineering and majestic mountain gate was impeccable. However, the spiritual energy of heaven and earth in the Soaring Cloud Sect's intersect is similar to the outside world. There's actually no spirit gathering formation. Well, I guess the Soaring Cloud Sect is only a 9th rank sect. It's already rare for them to have a spirit gathering formation. Tianyang closed his eyes and sensed for a while before taking a step forward. His feet stepped on solid ground. It was not much different from the outer sect. However, everyone understood. Now, they had already established themselves on the land of the inner sect and became Soaring Cloud Sect's inner sect disciples. The Soaring Cloud Sect does not pay attention to any complicated formalities. Therefore, as long as you pass the inner sect disciple assessment, you're already an inner sect disciple. However, the inner sect is vast. If you walk at a normal speed, you might get lost before you can find your own residence. Therefore, I'll give you a few maps. Consider it a meeting gift from Elder Lin after you enter the inner sect. Elder Lin stroked his beard and opened his space bag. A few maps appeared in front of everyone, and they reached out to take them. Hearing this, everyone looked carefully at the Soaring Cloud Sect's inner sect. I've marked out everyone's residence. In fact, you're all new disciples. The distance between you will not be too far. Elder Lin said. Hearing this, Wu Mingshi and Gu Xiu discussed with each other. Indeed, it was so. It seemed that even if they entered the inner sect, it did not mean that they would immediately soar to the sky. On the contrary, after entering the inner sect, they would have to start from the bottom and climb up step by step. With their own perseverance, they would surpass their senior brothers and become true geniuses. Now, I'll bring you to the ranking stone wall to record your names and identities. You can cultivate freely in the inner sect, Elder Lin said. Then, with a wave of his hand, everyone was once again brought onto the broad back of the bird-type demonic beast that was specially trained by the Soaring Cloud sect. It then flew towards the depths of the Soaring Cloud sect's inner sect. Not long after, the 6 of them arrived in front of a stone wall. This is the ranking stone wall of the Soaring Cloud sect's inner sect. It does not mean much to you now. However, if you want to shine in the inner sect, then you must work hard to fight for it. On the stone wall, the higher one's ranking is, the more cultivation resources the Cloud Soaring sect will give them. Now, as new disciples, you're only ranked last. Tianyang, you're ranked first. Come up first. Elder Lin explained and gestured for Tianyang to come up. While Elder Lin was explaining to them, Tianyang was also looking at the ranking stone wall. It did not look like anything special. However, there seemed to be an aura that spread out from it and was connected to a certain place. If he guessed correctly, that place was the core area of the Soaring Cloud sect. It seemed that the ranking stone wall was also controlled by the Soaring Cloud sect. Press your finger on any part of the ranking stone wall. After you say your name will automatically appear on the ranking stone wall. Elder Lin said. Hearing that, Tianyang nodded slightly. He extended his index finger and pressed it on the ranking stone wall. At that moment, the ranking stone wall suddenly trembled. Grains of sand fell. At first, the trembling was not obvious. Everyone did not notice anything. However, not long after, the ranking stone wall trembled as if there was an earthquake. It could be seen with the naked eye. Pieces of stone and grains of sand fell from above and landed on the ground. Seeing that, everyone's expression changed drastically. They hurriedly took a few steps back. Elder Lin's expression suddenly turned ugly. What's going on? This ranking stone wall has not had an accident for dozens of years. Why would it suddenly change like this today? Seeing that, Elder Lin's expression changed drastically. This ranking stone wall was not just an ordinary stone wall. One had to know that this ranking stone wall was something that the former Soaring Cloud sect leader had personally obtained from a blacksmith. There was no need to talk about its sturdiness. Even its durability was enough to allow it to be used for 1,000 years. However, what was going on today? For it to suddenly tremble so violently, could it be that there was an accident? Among all the people present, only Tianyang knew the reason for this. This ranking stone wall is actually not recorded using the method of imprinting a soul mark. Looking at the ranking stone wall in front of him in surprise, Tianyang chuckled in his heart. It uses the method of capturing soul ripples. By doing so, it can extend the shelf life for a long time. However, its sturdiness is far inferior to that of soul mark. However, the Soaring Cloud sect does not have any great enemies. This ranking stone wall is enough. Since it was used to capture soul ripples to record inner sect disciples, it was clear why the ranking stone wall was trembling so violently. Who was Tianyang? The Tianji Sword Emperor. A small ranking stone wall actually wanted to capture the Sword Emperor's soul ripples. If that was not courting death, what else could it be? Although Tianyang did not do anything and only said his name normally, his name was enough to trigger Tianyang's soul ripples. No matter how weak an emperor's soul ripples were, how could a small ranking stone wall capture them? The might of an emperor could not be violated. If Tianyang had not reacted in time and controlled his soul power, just the ripples from Tianyang's soul ripples would have been enough to cause the ranking stone wall to collapse. I didn't expect that recording my name would cause such trouble. Tianyang rubbed his head and smiled bitterly. Then he imprinted his soul mark on the ranking stone wall and took a few steps back. It was impossible to count on the ranking stone wall to continue capturing his name. Therefore, Tianyang could only reluctantly imprint his soul mark on the ranking stone wall. Otherwise, it would be impossible for his name to appear on the stone wall. After Tianyang imprinted his soul mark on the ranking stone wall, the ranking stone wall returned to normal. Seeing this, everyone's expression changed. Could it be that the changes on the ranking stone wall were caused by Tianyang? However, they could only keep this guess in their hearts. If they said it out loud, they would definitely be laughed at by others. Tianyang was only a body refinement realm cultivator. The ranking stone wall even recorded powerful intersect disciples who were in the Qi illumination realm. How could a body refinement realm cultivator cause the ranking stone wall to tremble like this. Soon, the five of them finished recording. Tianyang also took a look at his ranking. 315th place, Tianyang. Then, Tianyang's gaze turned and drifted to the leftmost ranking stone wall. The strongest inner sect disciples of the soaring cloud sect. First place, Yi Zhanling. The soul ripples emitted from the ranking stone wall indicated that he was at least in the Qi illumination realm. He was in no way inferior to Elder Lin, who had brought them here to record the ranking stone wall. Then your soaring cloud sect inner sect cultivation will begin from now on. Tianyang calmly retracted his gaze. At this moment, Elder Lin laughed and said, "Don't worry." Chapter 69. Arriving at his residence in the inner sanctum of the soaring cloud sect, Tianyang was satisfied even though he was the Tianji Sword Emperor. Although he came from a humble background and did not care about the conditions, a good environment was naturally more pleasing than a bad one. Although the residence that the soaring cloud sect had arranged for him was not considered a villa, it was still considered a very good place to cultivate. For Tianyang, it was enough. The only flaw was that this place was a little too close to the others. After going out, he turned around and walked 300 meters straight to Ling Yuhan's residence. Tianyang, who was used to cultivating alone, was not used to this. "Well, I didn't join a sect in my previous life. That's why I have such a solitary character. Now that I've been reborn, I'm in the Soaring Cloud sect. The interaction between people is indispensable." After muttering to himself, Tianyang felt relieved and walked into the residence. It was a small courtyard with a spacious martial arts field behind it. The residence itself was not a big deal. Tianyang was more concerned about the conditions of the martial arts field. After all, whether it was sword techniques, fist techniques, or finger techniques, they all needed constant practice to improve. Although Tianyang only glanced at the Soaring Cloud sword technique when he was in the outer sanctum of the Soaring Cloud sect last time, he still needed to fight in order to really exert its power. Although the martial arts field could not be compared to a real battle, it could still save Tianyang a lot of effort. At this time, in Ling Yuhan's residence, looking at the wall in front of her, Ling Yuhan was a little conflicted. When the demonic beast hunting assessment was held in the fearsome Beast Mountain range, Ling Yuhan had already seen how unfathomable Tianyang's strength was. Facing the second-level demonic beast whose strength was enough to kill the two of them thousands of times, Tianyang did not fight it head-on. Instead, he used all kinds of wonderful methods that she could not think of to kill it. Moreover, what shocked her the most was, Tianyang merely glanced at her swordsmanship and said, "Your talent in swordsmanship is not bad, and your foundation is not bad. However, your swordsmanship is still a little rough. Your attribute is ice. Ice is born with an extremely cold nature. If you want to unleash the greatest power of ice, you must carefully comprehend the profoundness of ice. Only then will you be able to unleash the true ice sword." Next, Tianyang used the slightly damaged fine steel sword, which was not even a low-grade precious weapon, to display the swordsmanship that she had painstakingly practiced for several months. Furthermore, it was countless times more powerful than when she used her full strength. It wasn't just in terms of strength. Even in terms of technique, usage, and comprehension of the Sword of Ice, Zhang Xian was far superior to him. It could be said to be an all-around suppression. Didn't Tianyang say that if I wanted to improve my swordsmanship, I could look for him? Ling Yuhan stood at the door and kept walking in circles. Ever since she entered and realized that Tianyang's residence was not far from her door, Ling Yuhan had been in this state. She didn't even have the mood to check her own residence and kept walking in circles at the door. But he is much stronger than me. His talent in swordsmanship can beat me dozens of times over. What if he was just saying it casually? Furthermore, Tianyang is a man. No. Swordsmanship requires an indomitable spirit. How can I be stuck for so long? Ling Yuhan kept walking in circles. With the strength of a cultivator in the tempered body state, she could easily resist this kind of dizziness. However, Ling Yuhan still felt a little dizzy. If others were to see this, they would definitely be shocked to find out. The former number one in the outer sect, Ling Yuhan's face was completely red. The martial arts field is not bad. Although it's not at the level of some of the martial arts holy lands or high-ranking sects in my previous life, it's not bad for a rank 9 sect. Tianyang muttered. He didn't realize that a few hundred meters away from the martial arts field, a young girl was walking in circles because of him. As for the rank 9 sect that Tianyang mentioned, it was a classification of forces in the Sky Continent. In the Celestial Continent, sects were divided into 9 ranks. Rank 1 was the strongest, and rank 9 was the weakest. Of course, that didn't mean that rank 9 sects were weak. After all, there were many sects that weren't qualified to be ranked. In his previous life, Tianyang didn't join any forces. At most, he had some dealings with them. Therefore, he wasn't very clear about the classification of rank 9 sects. However, one thing was for sure. The classification between sects was definitely based on strength. In his previous life, although Tianyang didn't join any forces and had always been in a state of freedom, because of his own terrifying strength, he was pulled in by many powerful forces as a guest. The forces that he stepped into were all extremely tyrannical. The weakest one was a rank 5 sect. The strongest Holy Land was as high as rank 1 or rank 2. It was naturally very easy to determine the level of Soaring Cloud sect. However, I have a feeling that 10,000 years later, the fog that pervades the Sky Continent is thicker than 10,000 years ago. Tianyang muttered to himself and frowned slightly. The great destruction of civilization 10,000 years ago was really a little too strange. Even in his previous life, when he was the famous Tianji Sword Emperor, he hadn't been to the entire Sky Continent. The Sky Continent was so big that it couldn't be measured by the Tao. Even if an emperor wanted to set foot in the entire Sky Continent, it would be difficult to do so. Moreover, in his previous life, Tianyang broke through to the Heaven Ascension realm before he was 100 years old and became a world-famous powerhouse. When he was about to be 100 years old, he successfully broke through to the peak of the Heaven Ascension realm and killed 3 great Heaven Ascension realm opponents in the world. With the blood of a Heaven Ascension realm powerhouse, he became an emperor. One had to know that to a powerful cultivator, 100 years old was just a relatively long period of time in their life. Tianyang was able to ascend to the position of an emperor at the age of 100 years old. It could be seen that Tianyang's talent was terrifying. This target is also much stronger than the scarecrows of the outer sect. I wonder if it can withstand my telepathic sword finger. Taking a seemingly very sturdy Iron Man from the side, Tianyang chuckled and took a few steps back, circulating the true essence in his body. True essence that could break through to the clear chi realm at any time condensed in Tianyang's hand. In the next moment, a bright and sharp light burst out from Tianyang's finger. Mystic level high-grade, telepathic sword finger. Using the finger as a sword, the finger light had the sharpness of a sword. Purely based on the level of comprehension, Tianyang had already reached the peak of the telepathic sword finger. However, what he lacked was only the experience of using this body to perform the telepathic sword finger. Puff! The sturdy Iron Man was simply unable to block the telepathic sword finger in the slightest. Seeing this, Tianyang sighed softly. At this moment, there was suddenly a hurried knock on the door behind him. Hearing this, Tianyang withdrew his hand, turned around, and walked over. As soon as he opened the door, Ling Yuhan, whose face was so red that it seemed as if blood was about to drip out, entered his line of sight. "You are?" Tianyang asked doubtfully. He had just entered the inner sect, and there was not much to deal with. Why did the number 1 in the outer sect come to find him? Tianyang did not feel that there was anything special about him. Of course, other than his strength. At this moment, Ling Yuhan suddenly raised her head. "Master, please accept this disciple as your disciple." Chapter 70. Master, please accept me as your disciple. When Ling Yuhan's firm cry rang out in front of Tianyang's door, Tianyang was completely dumbfounded. Even the Tianji Sword Emperor was dumbfounded at this moment. What was going on? Why did the former top disciple of the Outer Gate come to acknowledge him as her master out of nowhere? Even though he was much stronger than her, the gap between them was not that big at the moment. Judging from Ling Yuhan's inferior precious weapon, the Blue Sea Sword, Ling Yuhan's identity and background were obviously not weak. Ling Yuhan definitely did not know his identity. If that was the case, why did she not seek guidance from the elders in her family or sect, but came to acknowledge him as her master? What was going on? Since the start of the magical beast hunting assessment, I deeply felt that my cultivation in the Tao of the Sword was like the light of a firefly compared to that of the bright moon in the sky. Ling Yuhan said seriously as she looked at Tianyang's dumbfounded face. She was extremely determined in her heart. With just a few glances, he was able to point out the flaws in her swordsmanship. Moreover, he had personally demonstrated a truly perfect method. It could be said that if Tianyang wanted to, he could easily learn any of Ling Yuhan's swordsmanship. However, as the Tianji Sword Emperor, Tianyang did not care for swordsmanship that was at most to the lower profound level. However, this was enough to show how terrifying Tianyang's cultivation in the Tao of the Sword was. The more Ling Yuhan thought about it, the more she felt that Tianyang was unfathomable. Even the experts in her family who were close to the primordial transformation realm could not achieve such a performance. Coupled with some strange feelings in her heart, Ling Yuhan ran directly to Tianyang's door. "Master, I sincerely ask for your guidance. Please accept me as your disciple." Ling Yuhan only felt that her heart was thumping. It seemed that it was not only because of the matter of acknowledging a master. Tianyang's face couldn't be considered handsome, but one's appearance was determined by one's heart. After the Tianji Sword Emperor was reborn in this body, Tianyang's face became more and more similar to his appearance in his previous life. In addition, Tianyang himself was somewhat similar to the Tianji Sword Emperor, and Tianyang had an emperor's might deep within his soul, even if he didn't deliberately show it. However, the temperament that he exuded was enough to move the hearts of some young ladies. Tianyang was now in a difficult position. Ling Yuhan's talent in swordsmanship was really good. Even Tianyang rarely saw someone like her in his previous life. Moreover, although he had never directly interacted with her, Tianyang could vaguely feel that Ling Yuhan's martial soul was definitely not just the superior yellow-rank ice spirit fox. It seemed that there was a powerful bloodline sealed in Ling Yuhan's body, causing her martial soul to only display the superior yellow rank. It was precisely because of this that Tianyang noticed Ling Yuhan. Sealing a bloodline was easy to say, but extremely difficult to do. To be able to seal a person's bloodline and even affect their martial soul, they had to be at least in the Tao Fire realm. In this Arctic state, it was more or less enough for a transformation realm to appear. How could there be someone in the Tao Fire realm? In that case, Tianyang bitterly laughed in his heart as he looked at Ling Yuhan's determined gaze. "Then, I agree. However, you're only an in-name disciple now. If your strength improves in the future, you could be promoted to an official disciple," Tianyang said. Hearing this, Ling Yuhan was stunned for a moment, then became incomparably happy. Being an in-name disciple didn't matter, as long as she could be by Tianyang's side. When this thought came to her mind, Ling Yuhan was almost dumbfounded. Why would she have such an idea? Yes, it must be because Tianyang's cultivation in swordsmanship was too terrifying. It must be like this. He actually took in a disciple. Rubbing his chin, Tianyang was also a little embarrassed. In his previous life, he was all alone in the world. He didn't even have many relatives and friends, let alone a disciple. Therefore, even though Tianyang was the Tianji Sword Emperor, in this completely unfamiliar territory, he was also extremely embarrassed. I've observed that your body constitution is of the ice attribute, and you also practice ice attribute swordsmanship. In that case, I'll give this Ice Emperor's heavenly sword technique to you as a disciple as a gift. Tianyang pondered for a moment, then took out some scrolls from the space bag. He channeled his inner yuan and condensed it on the writing brush. In the sea of soul, a dusty memory slowly emerged. Tianyang immediately started writing the first volume of the Ice Emperor's heavenly sword technique on the scroll. The Ice Emperor's heavenly sword technique was a low-grade heaven-level ice attribute technique. Although its power was slightly weaker than the nine-tempered dragon body, for someone like Ling Yuhan who had an ice attribute body constitution, the Ice Emperor's heavenly sword technique was the most suitable one. Moreover, Ling Yuhan was only at the ninth level of the body refining realm. If she came into contact with a technique that was too profound, it would only hurt her Tao heart. Therefore, just writing the first volume was enough for Ling Yuhan to cultivate to the peak of the ninth level of the Bright Chi realm. As for this Ice Emperor's heavenly sword technique, it also had its own history. In his previous life, when Tianyang had just killed 3 Heaven Ascension Realm opponents and claimed the title of Emperor, he was still in the state of traveling the continent. It was at that time that he met a powerful Heaven Ascension Realm practitioner like him, the late stage of the Heaven Ascension Realm, the Ice Emperor. Killing 1 Heaven Ascension Realm practitioner would grant one the title of Emperor. Killing 3 Heaven Ascension Realm practitioners would grant one the title of Emperor. The Ice Emperor was a peerless woman who had once killed a Heaven Ascension Realm practitioner. However, different from the Origin Emperor Shirsu, Tianyang had only met her a few times. He had used some powerful martial arts that he didn't need to exchange for some good things with the Ice Emperor. This Ice Emperor's heavenly sword technique was one of them. At first glance, you really do have a bit of the Ice Emperor style. Tianyang stared at Ling Yuhan for a while, then sighed and handed the Ice Emperor's heavenly sword technique that he had already finished writing to Ling Yuhan. This is a volume of martial arts, and also my initiation gift to you. Don't ask what the martial arts is, and don't ask too much. As long as you understand a little of its mystery, all of your questions will be answered, Tianyang said. Hearing this, Ling Yuhan was also stunned as she received the first volume of the Ice Emperor's heavenly sword technique. With just a glance, Ling Yuhan was shocked by the Ice Emperor's heavenly sword technique. Ice extreme cold, seal all things in the world. The opening, the first sentence, was so domineering. Nodding her head heavily, Ling Yuhan held the Ice Emperor's heavenly sword technique and went to Tianyang's residence. In her heart, Tianyang's image became more and more unfathomable. This thing called martial arts was definitely not something that the Tian family, one of the 8 big families of the Blizzard State, could take out. At this moment, an unforeseen event occurred. Tianyang, get out here, get out here, get out here. The rolling sound was like a sudden explosion of thunder in the sky, and it even had the effect of echo. Ling Yuhan, who planned to comprehend the Ice Emperor's heavenly sword technique, also stopped at this moment. As for Tianyang, he chuckled and took a step forward. A boundless aura was released from his body. I say, why did you give up the inner disciple assessment after the arena competition? It turns out that you came to the inner disciple in advance and called for help. Tianyang chuckled. His gaze was like a sharp sword, directly piercing the depths of Xiao Hao's heart. The intruder was Xiao Hao. Chapter 71. At this moment, Xiao Hao was laughing coldly in his heart. From his point of view, Tianyang was of no help in the Lingyun sect and had no connections to speak of. In these few days, he probably didn't even have the slightest improvement in his true essence cultivation. As for Xiao Hao, he had a big brother in the inner sect. The reason why he gave up on a magical beast hunting assessment and didn't enter the inner sect was not only because he was severely injured by Tianyang, but also because of another important reason. In these few days, he had been receiving guidance from this big brother of his who was at the Bright Chi realm. His strength had increased by leaps and bounds. From his point of view, Tianyang had already exhausted all his strength to defeat him. In these few days, he hadn't improved at all. Therefore, he could definitely kill Tianyang now and avenge his humiliation. Tianyang, the humiliation you gave me in the inner disciple assessment, I will now return it to you in double. Xiao Hao sneered as he took a step forward and spoke in an overbearing manner. His eyes were full of contempt. Although he didn't know why his martial spirit had weakened, his true essence cultivation of the 9th level of the body refinement realm had been consolidated. His execution of martial techniques had also improved by leaps and bounds. From his point of view, Tianyang had already become a stepping stone on his path of cultivation. Now he would crush him. This is my big brother, ranked 50th on the intersect stone wall. Now, let my big brother witness how you will be killed by me. Xiao Hao laughed proudly. The eyes of the young man at the bright Qi realm flashed. He didn't say anything, but he tacitly agreed with Xiao Hao's words. Regarding this, Tianyang's heart didn't waver at all. He even wanted to laugh. Bright Qi realm, first level, ranked 50th? Although he had just entered the sect, his record on the stone wall was only around 300. However, in a magical beast hunting assessment, Tianyang had killed a magical beast whose strength was equivalent to the second level of the Bright Qi realm. This guy who was ranked 50th dared to show off in front of Tianyang was naturally not worthy of his attention. How about it? Don't tell me that Tianyang, who took first place in the inner disciple assessment, is a coward who doesn't even dare to accept the challenge of a loser. Xiao Hao mocked when he saw that Tianyang's expression remained unchanged. Meanwhile, Ling Yuhan finally couldn't bear it any longer, and she rebuked angrily. Xiao Hao, a loser like you still dares to insult my master? Master? Hearing this, Xiao Hao was taken aback. Just as he was about to have some doubts, the young man at the first level of the Radiant Qi realm opened his mouth. Tianyang, even though you're ranked first in the intersect assessment, you're still nothing in the intersect. Even though my brother did not enter the intersect, his strength is definitely not weaker than yours. Could it be that you did not accept the challenge because you are afraid that my brother will snatch your position as an intersect disciple? Said the young man. Ling Yuhan was about to continue rebuking him when Tianyang raised his hand and covered her mouth. Why bother arguing with two pieces of trash? It only takes one move to deal with this kind of person who is born cheap. Fight! Wait a moment. Master will show you how the Ice Emperor's heavenly sword technique is used. Tianyang laughed lightly. Hearing this, Ling Yuhan thoughtfully took a step back. She looked at Tianyang with a strange expression and then looked at Xiao Hao with a pitiful gaze. No one knew better than Ling Yuhan how unfathomable Tianyang's strength was. Even if Xiao Hao's strength had improved, in front of Tianyang, he was probably just a piece of trash. When Xiao Hao and the young man heard Tianyang's words, their faces suddenly became ferocious. Trash? This piece of trash, Tianyang, who was once one of the three great trash of the Lingyun sect, actually dared to call them trash? Hearing this, even the young man who was ranked 50th in the Lingyun sect's outer sect became furious. Xiao Hao, go. Beat this piece of trash until he's crippled. Hearing this, Xiao Hao's furious face suddenly curved into a ferocious smile. Yes, Tianyang die. Flame martial spirit, scarlet flame fist. Xiao Hao roared angrily. The flame martial spirit directly ignited on his fist, greatly increasing the effect of the scarlet flame fist. The true Yuan of the 9th level of the body refinement realm brazenly burst out. A hint of cruelty flashed across his eyes. Xiao Hao seemed to have already seen the result of his fist smashing Tianyang into minced meat. Finally learned not to use your martial spirit recklessly? You know how to condense your martial spirit's power. At least you have some comprehension. Unfortunately, your strength is still too weak. Tianyang shook his head and lightly laughed. Hearing this, Xiao Hao's face once again turned red. You're about to die, yet you still dare to bark. Tianyang die. Yuhan, watch carefully. This is how the Ice Emperor's heavenly sword technique is executed. Tianyang suddenly spoke. Hearing this, Ling Yuhan immediately became alert and stared at Tianyang without blinking. She still didn't know what the Ice Emperor's heavenly sword technique was. However, if there was someone to demonstrate it to her before she started cultivating, it would definitely be much easier for her to cultivate the Ice Emperor's heavenly sword technique. Finger is not a sword, but it can also replace a sword. An ice sword can naturally transform into an ice finger. Tianyang softly spat out a few words. Following this, his right index finger was suddenly covered by a layer of ice. In the next moment, the telepathic finger sword, an extremely cold finger, burst out from Tianyang's finger and instantly arrived in front of Xiao Hao. You're actually not using a sword? You dare to be so arrogant. Tianyang, you're dead meat. Scarlet Flame Fist. Looking at the finger that suddenly arrived in front of him, Xiao Hao angrily roared. His fist that was burning with scarlet flames suddenly blasted out. Bang! The ice finger sword and the scarlet flame fist fiercely collided together. In the next moment, Tianyang softly spat out a word. Seal! The ice finger sword suddenly emitted a dazzling light. Following this, the burning scarlet flame fist was instantly frozen by the icy blue light. A terrifying cold qi directly penetrated into Xiao Hao's body. Xiao Hao only felt that his heart was about to be frozen, and his face suddenly turned pale. Following this, Xiao Hao suddenly spat out a mouthful of blood. This mouthful of blood actually turned into ice shards under the scorching sun. Following this, his flame martial spirit was directly extinguished. Xiao Hao's mind was also frozen by that terrifying cold qi, and he directly fainted. In just one round, the arrogant and domineering Xiao Hao was crushed by Tianyang's finger. What's going on? Seeing this strange situation, the young man's face suddenly changed. He hurriedly squatted down and took Xiao Hao's pulse. Although there was a pulse, it was so weak that it was almost impossible to feel. You actually dared to injure my brother like this. Tianyang, you're courting death. Suddenly standing up, the true Yuan of the bright Qi realm crazily erupted. The young man angrily roared and directly rushed out. Master, Jade Sea Sword. At this moment, Ling Yuhan also suddenly reacted and directly threw the low-grade artifact, Jade Sea Sword, over. Tianyang stretched out his hand and grabbed the Jade Sea Sword. Suddenly, it was as if he had control of the entire sword. At this moment, the young man's furious attack had already been launched. Tianyang Dai, Flame Martial Spirit, Burning Wave Palm. The flames burned as the young man angrily roared. Tianyang looked at the young man in front of him, who was much stronger than Xiao Hao, and lightly smiled. The Jade Sea Sword slashed down from above. Chapter 72. The sword was unsheathed. It could cut through mountains and cut through waves. A violent sword aura exploded from Tianyang's Jade Sea Sword and swept through the entire area. It destroyed all the obstacles along the way and then directly hit the young man's hand. The Burning Wave Palm was a half-step to the profound level martial arts technique. It was much stronger than Xiao Hao's Flaming Blood Fist. If it was someone else, Tianyang, who had not reached the first level of the Bright Qi realm, would have a hard time dealing with it. However, it was a different story if it was this youth. The grass on the ground was cut into pieces by the terrifying sword aura. At this moment, the youth finally felt the terrifying power from the sword aura, and his face changed. Tianyang could actually unleash such a terrifying attack. Damn it, how dare you break my Burning Wave Palm? If that's the case, don't blame me for being merciless. The youth shouted angrily, as if Tianyang's attack on him was treacherous. The youth, who had been arrogant for a long time, despised Tianyang after hearing that he was just a piece of trash. But now, this young man whom he had looked down upon had actually dared to attack him. Furthermore, he had even broken through his palm technique. Come at me. He laughed lightly. The Jade Sea Sword was a low-grade treasure weapon and could not be compared to a fine steel sword. Although Tianyang could use the fine steel sword to end the battle, it would not be as easy as using the Jade Sea Sword. Moreover, no matter how weak this youth was to Tianyang, once they fought, the pressure would be great. The fine steel sword was already riddled with internal injuries. If it were to fight with the young man again, it might even break apart. Tianyang was naturally unwilling to accept this. Burning Flame. Give me your life, piece of trash. Low-grade, profound, level martial arts technique. Flaming Earth Palm. The youth roared angrily. The Bright Qi realm's true Yuan surged, and the flame martial spirit that was burning his entire arm flew up again. The Qi of the earth appeared in the young man's body. The Earth Flame Palm was indeed a low Xian level martial skill. It was able to control the Qi of the heavens and earth. His aura rose to its limit as his eyes were filled with rage and murderous intent. Tianyang, a piece of trash, actually dared to attack him. Mystic low grade? How did this guy know the rank of my martial skill? Tianyang's heart flashed with doubt, But in the middle of the battle, Tianyang did not have time to think about it. The corner of his mouth curled up into a cold smile. Earth Flame Palm? The might of the flames of the Great Earth was not bad. Unfortunately, a profound low-grade martial skill also depended on who was using it. In the hands of a true powerhouse, a low-grade yellow-ranked martial skill could also turn something rotten into something magical. However, in the hands of a weakling, a high-grade heaven-ranked martial skill could also turn something magical into something rotten. Without a doubt, this young man belonged to the latter category. This flame martial spirit might also be a high-grade yellow-ranked martial skill. In that case, I can't let this fight go to waste. Tianyang's mouth curled up slightly. In the next moment, the Sky Sword martial spirit flashed out and attached itself to the Blue Sea Sword. The moment the Sky Sword attached itself to the Blue Sea Sword, the Blue Sea Sword seemed to explode with a shocking light. The barrier between it and Tianyang completely disappeared. The power of the Blue Sea Sword was also unleashed by Tianyang to the extreme. Earth Flame Palm, kill him. I'm going to tear you into pieces. The young man roared. The true Yuan in his body surged out. In the face of this piece of trash who dared to violate his dignity, there was only one thought in the young man's eyes. That was to kill Tianyang alive. You dare to show off your insignificant skills. Tianyang sneered. The Blue Sea Sword in his hand suddenly exploded with a shocking light. Yuhan looked carefully. This is the first sword move of the Ice Emperor's Sky Sword technique, Ice Spirit. Tianyang smiled. He didn't use the flowing cloud sword technique that he was used to. Instead, he used a low-grade heaven martial skill, the powerful sword move of the Ice Emperor's Sky Sword technique. Although this sword move didn't have a specific grade, based on the Sword Emperor's intuition, if all the sword moves of the Ice Emperor's Sky Sword technique were combined into one set of sword techniques, this set of sword techniques would definitely not be inferior to a peerless earth martial skill. Although this Ice Spirit sword technique was only the first move and belonged to the basic sword move, its power was at the high-grade profound martial skill. The Earth Flame will eventually be frozen by the Ice Spirit. Now, in the extreme cold of the Ice Emperor, be destroyed. Tianyang said softly. The Blue Sea Sword once again released a ray of sword chi. It was different from a violent sword chi from before. This ray of sword chi was actually like real ice. Just by looking at it, one would feel as if they had fallen into a bottomless abyss. Kill! The young man roared. His inner yuan was madly circulating. The aura of a level 1 bright Chi Realm cultivator was released to the extreme. Tianyang's inner yuan also started to circulate. If he didn't take out something to fight against a level 1 bright Chi Realm cultivator, even if it was Tianyang, there was a risk of losing. This wasn't an ordinary battle. It was the most primitive and simplest of battles. Boom! Apart from a battle of pure strength, there was nothing else to talk about. Boom! The Ice Spirit Sword and the huge flaming palm formed by the Earth Fire Palm collided fiercely. In an instant, a deafening explosion resounded between heaven and earth. Boom, 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 boom. Both sides continued to exchange blows. However, in order to use the Earth Flame Palm, the young man had already used up all his strength. In addition to the exhaustion caused by the burning wave palm and other moves, the young man was now like a lamp that had run out of oil. On the other hand, Tianyang had only used one move to break the young man's move. Under this situation, although Tianyang's cultivation was only at the peak of body refinement realm level 9, he still had the upper hand. However, he still had the upper hand. It was only a matter of time before the young man was defeated. This is the power of the Ice Emperor's Heavenly Sword technique. Looking at the Ice Spirit Sword technique that had the upper hand, Ling Yuhan's eyes kept flashing. She unconsciously tightened her grip on the blue scroll in her hand. She suddenly felt that the Ice Emperor's Heavenly Sword technique Volume 1, which Tianyang had only spent 10 minutes to write, was more powerful than all the martial techniques she had seen before. Who is Tianyang? He can even use something like the Ice Emperor's Heavenly Sword technique, using his body refinement realm cultivation to fight a level 1 bright Chi realm cultivator head-on and gain the upper hand. Such a person. Ling Yuhan didn't continue speaking. However, the strange light in her eyes revealed her thoughts. In her heart, Tianyang was not only a rising piece of trash, but he was also shrouded in a layer of mystery. Ling Yuhan couldn't help but want to uncover it. At this moment, Tianyang also smiled slightly. The ice spirit sword technique suddenly shone brightly and completely engulfed the earth fire palm. The earth fire palm was broken. Under the influence of the qi, the young man's face suddenly turned pale. He took a few steps back and even spat out a mouthful of blood. The contempt and mockery in their eyes, as they looked at Tianyang, had also turned into fear. This is the 50th inner disciple of the Soaring Cloud sect, level 1 bright Qi realm. Swinging the jade sea sword in his hand, Tianyang took a few steps forward and forced the young man to take a few steps back in fear. He even almost fell down. A ray of sword Qi suddenly shot out. The young man was caught off guard and was directly hit. Blood flowed out of his right shoulder and dripped onto the ground. Chapter 73. That's all there is to it. When Tianyang's calm voice sounded, the young man's eyes widened as he stared at Tianyang. However, in the next moment, he spat out a mouthful of blood and fainted. Ling Yuhan was shocked when she saw that the young man was easily killed by Tianyang and was even angered to the point of vomiting blood and fainting. That was a stage 1 bright Qi realm martial artist who was ranked 50th in the Soaring Cloud sect. Compared to a normal stage 2 demonic beast, he was much stronger. However, Tianyang only used a few swords as if he was dealing with a chicken or a dog. He did not even use his full strength. From the beginning to the end, Tianyang just stood in the same spot and did not move a single step. He did not even use his body movement technique to dodge. It was as if he was saying, "He is not worthy of my dodging. Master, you are so powerful." Ling Yuhan's eyes sparkled, and he was just short of seeing stars. Hearing this, Tianyang smiled embarrassedly. Dealing with a few trash who were arrogant and domineering just because they had some strength, he even had to use his true core. To the Tianji Sword Emperor, this kind of battle record was not very good. Now that I have entered the inner sect, it is time to advance to the bright Qi realm. Tianyang muttered and then smiled. You can stay here and learn the Ice Emperor's heavenly sword technique. I will take a look at the other places in the inner sect. The Soaring Cloud sect's inner sect was divided into a few large areas. The new disciples lived in one area, while the others cultivated in another area. In the most central area, there was not only the sect leader's residence, but also the mission hall, the martial arts arena, and the ranking stone wall were there. Here, with you? Little did he know that after Ling Yuhan heard this, he was instantly thrown into disarray. Her face suddenly turned red. This was Tianyang's residence. If Tianyang asked her to cultivate here, did it mean that Tianyang wanted her to stay here? All right, Tianyang raised his head and glanced at Ling Yuhan, who was thinking about the next itinerary and didn't care about her reaction. Ling Yuhan nodded and agreed. After that, Ling Yuhan carried the first scroll of the Ice Emperor's Heaven Sword technique and walked into Tianyang's house. Tianyang didn't know that his casual words had caused Ling Yuhan's heart to waver so much. At this moment, he was pondering. I've already knocked him out, but I still don't know his name. Let's go to the ranking stone wall to take a look. Tianyang muttered as he kicked the young man who was blocking the entrance away. Then, he walked towards the core area of the Soaring Cloud sect. However, at the same time, in front of the stone wall, as an item that ranked all the Soaring Cloud sect's inner disciples, the ranking stone wall was extremely important to the inner disciples. Therefore, at almost every moment, there were some inner court disciples looking at the ranking stone wall. The ranking stone wall changed. A young-looking young man looked at the huge black stone wall and suddenly realized that something was wrong. Hearing this, the other people's attention was also attracted by this sentence, and they all looked at the black stone wall. There's nothing wrong. Wait, why did the person who was ranked 50th change? A young man glanced over and didn't find anything wrong. Just as he was about to continue chatting with his friend next to him, he suddenly saw an unfamiliar name from the corner of his eye. After taking a few steps, the young man's face suddenly changed. He was extremely shocked. Senior brother Xiao Ping, who was ranked 50th, who was at the first stage of the Bright Chi realm, was eliminated. The rules of the ranking stone wall were very simple. If the loser's ranking was higher than the loser's, then the winner would replace the loser's ranking. However, this kind of ranking change would usually only appear in the fighting arena. However, Xiao Ping, who was ranked 50th, wasn't in the fighting arena at this moment. Not long ago, I saw Xiao Ping and his younger brother Xiao Hao. I don't know where they went. Could it be that they went to fight someone? But that can't be right. We all know that there are people who have the ability to be ranked 50th. Who is this Tianyang? Another young man said doubtfully. At this moment, the young man who spoke first seemed to have thought of something and said weakly, "This Tianyang, could it be that Tianyang, who was ranked first in this year's inner court disciple assessment?" As his voice fell, it was as if time had frozen and the entire place was silent. So he's called Xiao Ping. TSK. This name is not bad. Why is that person so annoying? Tianyang muttered as he glanced at the stone wall and saw that Xiao Ping had fallen to the 300th place. At this time, there were fewer people on the stone wall, so Tianyang wasn't discovered by anyone. However, the news of the new disciple defeating the 50th place disciple at the first stage of the Bright Chi realm gradually spread. It was as if a bomb had been dropped among some of the older disciples who were ranked below the 50th place, causing a sensation. However, as the main character of this matter, the Tianji Sword Emperor, was unaware of it. After looking at the stone wall, he thought of something and walked to another place. That place was called the Elixir Pavilion. It was the place where the inner court disciples of the Soaring Cloud sect came to exchange for elixirs. Elixirs were extremely precious to ordinary people. Even ordinary self-cultivators would find it difficult to get their hands on them. However, that was only for ordinary self-cultivators. For a 9th-rank sect like the Soaring Cloud sect, elixirs were precious, but it was not impossible to get their hands on them. Of course, after getting their hands on the elixirs, they would not provide them to the disciples for free. They would have to exchange for them. As a 6th-rank alchemist, Tianyang naturally wouldn't spend gold coins and spiritual stones to exchange for elixirs. As long as he had the ingredients, he could even refine a 6th-rank elixir. Then, what was the point of having the Soaring Cloud sect's Elixir Pavilion? He went to the Elixir Pavilion just to inquire about the ingredients. Not long after entering, Tianyang walked out of the Elixir Pavilion with some regret. Although the Elixir Pavilion had a rich collection, most of them were just ordinary 1st-rank elixirs. For the current Tianyang, they were not very useful. After inquiring about the ingredients, the Elixir Pavilion could only answer that they didn't know. In this regard, Tianyang could only sigh. The ingredients he wanted to inquire about were not high-grade ingredients. It was one of the ingredients for the elixir that could help him temper his body when he was in the Clear Chi realm. The blood-refining elixir. Now, Tianyang had already obtained the most important and precious ingredient, the blood-red devil Ganoderma. However, he didn't have anything else. At this moment, have you heard? Xiao Ping, a disciple of the Xiao clan, one of the 8 great clans of the Arctic state, was defeated by a new disciple. I heard that because of this, Xiao Ping's ranking dropped to the 300th place. He fainted on the side of the road. Looking at the situation, he probably vomited a mouthful of blood. In one of the courtyards, a few Lingyun sect inner court disciples were sitting around a table as they discussed amongst themselves. TSK, this Xiao Ping's strength is not bad. His cultivation of the Clear Chi realm isn't just for show. No matter how strong the new disciple is, he can't be strong enough to defeat someone of the Clear Chi realm. Xiao Ping's loss is most likely due to his carelessness and underestimation of his opponent. The young man who seemed to be the leader said in a low voice. Hearing this, the others also heard something unusual from this person's words. You mean those in the top 50 all have the opportunity to participate in that big event? This new disciple obviously isn't qualified. A cold light flashed in the young man's eyes as he said, "You guys, go challenge Tianyang tomorrow and kick him out of the top 50. Chapter 74. The next day, Tianyang awoke from his cultivation state and opened his eyes. A glint flashed across his eyes. Although his cultivation base had already reached the peak of the 9th level of the body refinement realm, and his blood chi had also broken through to the supreme realm of 500 feet, he still had to cultivate. The most important thing to do after entering the clear chi realm was to open up the sea of chi. The true yuan of a body refinement realm cultivator existed in the entire body. In battle, they could not use much of it, and the amount they could store was not high. However, after entering the clear chi realm, they would automatically open up a sea of chi. As their cultivation increased, the number of seas of chi would also increase. When they reached the 9th level of the clear chi realm, they would have 9 seas of chi. Their battle prowess would be enough to kill countless body refinement realm cultivators. Tianyang was building the foundation for opening up the sea of chi when he entered the clear chi realm. In my previous life, although I had a blood chi of 790 feet when I was in the body refinement realm, when I opened up the sea of chi, it was only 981 feet because of insufficient preparation. The limit of the sea of chi is definitely not this small. What a pity. Tianyang sighed softly. In his previous life, although he was the Sword Emperor and was the strongest person in the mainland, other than the body refinement realm, he did not cultivate to perfection in the other realms. This was also one of Tianyang's regrets. Now that he had reincarnated, he had the opportunity to make up for these regrets. All of these regrets must be made up for. Speaking of which, if an inner sect disciple wants to obtain more cultivation resources, they must obtain a higher ranking on the ranking stone wall. Besides fighting, the most important thing is to complete missions in the mission hall. Tianyang muttered, in the clear chi realm, the most important thing is to absorb the spiritual chi of heaven and earth. When the spiritual chi of heaven and earth is insufficient, spiritual stones are the most important choice. I am currently ranked 50 and can receive about 30 spiritual stones from the Lingyun sect every month. However, it is not enough. The larger the sea of chi, the more spiritual chi of heaven and earth one would need for cultivation. This was because the sea of chi represented the amount of true yuan stored in the clear chi realm cultivator's body. True yuan was formed from the spiritual chi of heaven and earth. Therefore, the larger one's chi sea was, the more spiritual chi of heaven and earth would be consumed. Spirit stones were the accumulation of the spiritual energy of heaven and earth. However, if one wanted to use them for cultivation, the amount required was not small. Although Xiao Ping, who had fought with Tianyang, was at the first level of the clear chi realm, his chi sea was only between 200 to 300 feet wide. The amount of true yuan he could store was extremely small. Otherwise, in the battle with Tianyang, he would not have exhausted his true essence so quickly and could only use his last desperate attack. If that was not the case, with Xiao Ping's cultivation at the first level of the Bright Chi realm, he would not only be ranked in the top 50. Tianyang had seen some cultivators from the center of the continent in his previous life. Although a sea of chi of 200 to 300 feet wasn't considered trash, it was still limited. Although the Lingyun sect was only a rank 9 sect, their standard were not bad. Xiao Ping was only ranked 50 in the inner sect. Yuhan, this girl, seems to be fated with the Ice Emperor. Since yesterday afternoon, when she was comprehending the Ice Emperor's Heaven Sword technique, she has not shown any signs of waking up. Sensing the movement in the room next door, Tianyang smiled knowingly. Since last night, Ling Yuhan's room had been emitting waves of cold air. Obviously, this was a phenomenon caused by cultivating the Ice Emperor's Heaven Sword technique. The talent of this in-name disciple that he had taken was not bad. If it was an ordinary person, even if they were able to cultivate the Ice Emperor's Heaven Sword technique, they would not be so outstanding. Ling Yuhan was able to cultivate for such a long time on her first try. This proved that the compatibility between her and the Ice Emperor's Heaven Sword technique was extremely high. Perhaps in the future, she will be an existence that is not weaker than the Ice Emperor. Tianyang smiled and then stepped out of the room. If he wanted to obtain more cultivation resources, missions and martial arts competitions were the only 2 ways. Tianyang did not plan to do martial art competitions, but missions were not bad. Missions allowed him to come into contact with more places and wider areas. Perhaps Tianyang could use these missions to find information about the blood-refining pills, medicinal herbs. Oh, isn't this the new disciple who just defeated Xiaoping, who was ranked 50th, the super genius Tianyang? Just as Tianyang walked into the core area of the soaring cloud sect, a disdainful, mocking voice sounded in front of him. A tall young man stood in front of Tianyang and looked down at Tianyang from above. His eyes were filled with disdain. Wu Meng was extremely displeased with Tianyang, this new disciple who had suddenly appeared and defeated Xiaoping, replacing Xiaoping's 50th position. In his opinion, Xiaoping was just a piece of trash who had only opened up a 24 feet Qi Si. Compared to Wu Meng, who was ranked 36th, Xiaoping's Qi Si was 10 feet lower. Although a 34 feet Qi Si was nothing to a true genius, in Wu Meng's heart, Xiaoping was just a piece of trash. This new disciple, who had defeated a piece of trash, actually wanted to participate in that big event together with them. This made Wu Meng feel as if his dignity was being challenged. Some people nearby also noticed Wu Meng and Tianyang at the intersection. They stopped and looked at the two of them. One of them was a new disciple who had defeated Xiaoping within a day of entering the intersect. The other was a veteran disciple who was ranked 36th. Could it be that these two people had some grudges? Who are you? Tianyang frowned and asked. Hearing this rude question, the people nearby were stunned. Did Tianyang not know how overbearing Wu Meng was? Wu Meng, ranked 36th, was enough to show disdain for almost 90% of the disciples in the soaring cloud sect. His cultivation was also extremely powerful. With the cultivation of the second stage of the Bright Qi realm and a 34 feet Qi Si, it could be said that Wu Meng had the possibility of reaching the top 30. Tianyang, even if he defeated Xiaoping and reached the 50th position, he was still only a cultivator of the body, refining realm. How dare he talk to Wu Meng like this? Sure enough, after hearing this, Wu Meng's face suddenly became gloomy. Kid, do you know who you were talking to? I don't know. If there's nothing else, move aside. Tianyang frowned. Whether it was before or after his rebirth, he did not know this person. In his memory, there was no impression of this person at all. Why was this guy blocking his way? Move aside? You actually want me to move aside? Hearing this, Wu Meng's face suddenly became ferocious. How dare a new disciple speak to him like this? That's Wu Meng, who is ranked 36th. Tianyang actually dared to speak to him like this. This is bad. The young man next to him looked at Tianyang in disbelief. Did this guy really not know who Wu Meng was? How dare you be so rude to someone who is stronger than you? If there is another day, you will end up being killed. Today, I will teach you what it means to respect your elders. The strong are the ones who are respected. Wu Meng shouted coldly as he circulated the true yuan in his body. Chapter 75. Berserk Lion Fist. Wu Meng roared as he sneered in his heart. This new disciple who defeated Xiaoping due to his carelessness would definitely not be able to block his Berserk Lion Fist. The Berserk Lion Fist was different from the Berserk Tiger Fist. The Berserk Tiger Fist was an ordinary yellow-ranked martial skill. However, his Berserk Lion Fist was a peerless yellow-ranked martial skill. It was almost at the level of a half-step profound martial skill. It was different from the Outer Sect. Within the Outer Sect's martial skill pavilion, there were only yellow rank martial skills. There were very few profound rank martial skills. In order to prevent the Outer Sect disciples from feeling inferior, the Lingyun sect erased all the words regarding ranks from the Outer Sect's martial skill pavilion. After entering the Inner Sect, one could even come in contact with the profound martial skills in the Inner Sect's martial skill pavilion. Therefore, the Inner Sect disciples all knew about the ranks of martial skills. And this Berserk Lion Fist was one of the best among the peerless yellow-ranked martial skills. In Wu Meng's opinion, if Tianyang were to receive this fist, even if he didn't die, he would be crippled. Xiaoping is trash, and you, the new disciple, are also trash. Berserk Lion Fist. Hearing the familiar name of the martial skill, Tianyang was surprised. It seemed to be similar to Bai Lu's Berserk Tiger Fist. However, Looking at Wu Meng's berserk lion fist, Tianyang looked at Wu Meng with pity. Wu Meng was tall and strong, but his berserk lion fist didn't have the intent of a berserk lion. Even Bai Lu had touched a little of it. Your true yuan is quite condensed, but it's a pity that your understanding of the berserk lion fist is only at the surface. The berserk lion is a madness that comes from the heart, not a disguised madness. This kind of madness can only be considered weak. For this peerless yellow-ranked martial skill to fall into your hands, it's really a waste. Tianyang sighed. Hearing this, Wu Meng was instantly enraged. Veins appeared on his forehead. A piece of trash dares to evaluate my martial skill? You're courting death. The Clear Chi Realm second stage, True Yuan quickly condensed on his fist. He did not use his martial spirit because, in Wu Meng's opinion, the Heavenly Sun Realm was not worthy of him using his martial spirit. Hearing this, Tianyang did not bother to say anything. He had not even bothered to use his Tongming fist. Without any fancy moves, he threw a straight punch. Seeing this, everyone was shocked. Tianyang's cultivation was at a disadvantage. Facing Wu Meng's peerless yellow-ranked berserk lion fist, he actually dared to not use a martial skill. Even though it was hard to avoid being heavily injured by Wu Meng if he used a martial skill, he would definitely die if he didn't use a martial skill. Thinking of the bloody scene that was about to unfold, many people turned their heads away, not daring to look anymore. Could it be that the first-place disciple in the inner disciple assessment was gone just like that? Like a shooting star, it was a flash in the pan. Bang! At this moment, the berserk lion fist collided with Tianyang's fist. A turbulent wave of qi exploded from the center of the collision, blowing the grass on the ground askew. Seeing this, Wu Meng's eyes sharpened. He actually managed to block it. But it's useless. Wu Meng's true yuan continued to condense. In Wu Meng's fist, the sound of a lion's roar could be heard. Lion's roar. Senior Wu Meng actually practiced the berserk lion fist to such a level. It's over. Some people looked at the situation in a daze and sighed in their hearts. The berserk lion fist was something that could only be achieved when one practiced the berserk lion fist to a certain level. Wu Meng's true yuan cultivation was already higher than Tianyang's, and he had even practiced it to the level of the berserk lion fist. Tianyang, there was no need to fight anymore. At this moment, Tianyang's eyebrows twitched. To be able to forcefully stimulate a bit of the berserk lion fist concept, not bad. Unfortunately, it's still too weak. Tianyang lightly shouted. Earth Dragon's body erupting. A terrifying force comparable to the Earth Dragon's body erupted from Tianyang's body. Without the participation of true yuan, that terrifying physical strength directly suppressed the berserk lion fist's roar. In fact, just a trace of the Earth Dragon's strength was enough to make Wu Meng feel that the skinny youth in front of him contained an explosive force that could crush him. Seeing this, Wu Meng refused to believe it. Just as he was about to continue to condense true yuan, the Earth Dragon's body had also finished warming up. Boom! Before true yuan could condense in his fist, the Earth Dragon's body completely erupted. A terrifying force, with an unstoppable force, destroyed all of Wu Meng's attacks. The violent force did not contain the slightest bit of true yuan and directly rushed into Wu Meng's body. Seeing this, Wu Meng's face changed. He could not care about continuing his attack. He staggered back a few steps and circulated his true yuan. Only then did he dissolve the force. He looked at Tianyang in horror. This guy was actually so strong. This was also because Tianyang had not used the Tongming fist. If Tianyang had used the Tongming fist, then what awaited Wu Meng would not be just a simple force. With Tianyang's familiarity with the Tongming fist, Wu Meng would not have been able to detect the hidden force he had released. If the hidden force had exploded, even if Wu Meng did not die, he would have lost a layer of skin. How could he be like now, standing on the same spot unscathed? Your physical strength is actually so strong. Wu Meng said in shock as he looked at Tianyang. In the previous exchange, he did not sense any true yuan. Without using true yuan, he was able to break his berserk lion fist. This physical strength was too terrifying. Then, if Tianyang had used true yuan, what would have happened to him? Could it be that with just one punch, he would have been defeated like Xiao Ping, who had vomited blood and fainted? The spectators at the side were extremely shocked at this moment. Tianyang had actually broken Wu Meng's berserk lion fist in a direct confrontation, and had even forced him to retreat. Wu Meng had retreated 3 steps, but Tianyang was still standing on the same spot, not moving at all. Did this mean that Tianyang had gained the upper hand in the short exchange just now? How is this possible? Tianyang, it must be a coincidence. Moreover, Xiao Ping's strongest martial skill is only a peerless grade yellow rank martial skill. My strongest martial skill is a low-grade profound rank fist technique. Once a low-grade profound rank fist technique is used, no matter how strong Tianyang's physical strength is, it is impossible for him to win. Waves of shock surged in Wu Meng's heart as he looked at Tianyang, who had a calm smile on his face. He kept convincing himself in his heart. Then, Wu Meng's eyes turned cold again. You were just lucky to break my berserk lion fist. In the end, a body refinement realm cultivator cannot match a clear chi realm cultivator. You, Tianyang, are just trash in the body refinement realm. In front of me, who is at the 2nd level of the clear chi realm, you're just an ant that I can casually crush. Wu Meng sneered. Hearing this, Tianyang raised his eyelids and glanced at Wu Meng indifferently. Ant? He seemed to have heard this word not long ago. It seemed that the person who had said this word was now lying unconscious in a hospital bed. A trash ant actually dared to defeat the 50th ranked Xiao Ping and occupy the 50th position. You even dare to break my berserk lion fist. A cold light flashed in his eyes. There was actually someone who dared to break his berserk lion fist, and it was only a new disciple in the body refinement realm. Wu Meng's heart was filled with boundless anger. Trash, do you dare to fight with me in the arena? Looking down at Tianyang with contempt, Wu Meng sneered. Hearing this, Tianyang's eyebrows twitched. Fight? It seemed that Wu Meng's ranking was 36th. Someone had just delivered his 50th ranking, and now there was another person who wanted to surrender his ranking? Why wouldn't I dare to challenge a loser? Chapter 76. Hey, have you heard? Tianyang defeated Xiao Ping on his first day in the intersect and became the 50th disciple of the intersect. He wants to fight with Wu Meng. What? Wu Meng is the 36th disciple on the stone wall. What is Tianyang's cultivation level? He's not even in the clear chi realm, and he wants to fight with Wu Meng? Isn't that so? I don't know what Tianyang is thinking. Logically speaking, someone who can become the number 1 disciple in the intersect assessment shouldn't be so stupid. Wu Meng is a cultivator at the 2nd level of the clear chi realm. Tianyang is only in the body refinement realm. Isn't he courting death by fighting with Wu Meng? The discussion fell into Ling Yuhan's ears. Ling Yuhan's expression changed. She had just successfully cultivated the first volume of the Ice Emperor's heavenly sword technique and purified the true yuan in her body. Just as she was about to report the news to Tianyang, she realized that Tianyang was no longer in the room. She walked out, and before she could ask anyone, the news fell into her ears. Why would Master fight with Wu Meng? Wu Meng is not an ordinary 36th disciple. Ling Yuhan's expression kept changing. Unlike Tianyang, Ling Yuhan was the number 1 disciple in the outer sect. She knew the difference between the outer and inner sect disciples. Wu Meng was one of the top disciples in the inner sect. Naturally, Ling Yuhan knew about him. Although Wu Meng was only ranked 36th, in terms of strength, he definitely had the ability to enter the top 30. I don't care. I have to go to the arena to take a look. Gritting her teeth, Ling Yuhan immediately activated her true yuan and rushed towards the arena. At this moment, the arena was already bustling with noise. Battles were the best way to cultivate and had always been favored by cultivators. As the largest battle arena in the intersect, the popularity of the arena was naturally high. There were already many people watching and fighting in the arena. After Tianyang and Wu Meng arrived, the arena became lively again. Wu Meng, Tianyang? Why would 2 people in the top 50 come to the martial arts arena? Could it be that they want to compete in martial arts? Some people in the audience were shocked as they looked at the two people who had stepped into the arena. No matter if it was Tianyang or Wu Ming, they were both popular figures in the inner sect. Tianyang, in particular, defeated Xiao Ping on the first day he entered the sect, becoming the fastest person in the history of the inner sect to reach the rankings. This also greatly increased Tianyang's fame. These two people appeared in the martial arts arena at the same time. Moreover, it seemed that there was a strong smell of gunpowder, which made many people suspicious. After Wu Ming and Tianyang stepped into the arena, many people also rushed into the audience. Big brother, tell me, why did these two top 50 geniuses suddenly come to the martial arts arena? A young man looked doubtfully at the two people who were about to enter the arena. He turned his head and said to the disciple who had just entered the audience, "Haven't you heard? Tianyang, the top disciple in the inner sect assessment, defeated Xiao Ping on the first day after he entered the inner sect. Wu Ming went to challenge him, and in a battle, he made Wu Ming suffer a loss. After that, he accepted Wu Ming's challenge," the young man said excitedly. Hearing this, the person's face changed. Tianyang is only in the body-tempering realm. How could he make Wu Ming suffer a loss? Moreover, he even accepted Wu Ming's challenge. This Tianyang, how could he be so stupid? How could a body-tempering realm cultivator defeat an illuminating chi realm cultivator? The person said angrily. However, in the arena, the two people were already at daggers drawn. "Kid, you can regret it now. This martial arts arena is my, Master Wu's, home ground. My cultivation is far above yours." The corners of Wu Ming's mouth curled into a sinister smile. Hearing this, Tianyang chuckled noncommittally. Although Tianyang was not against the martial arts arena, he was not willing to come here often. However, since Wu Ming was the one who suggested seeking death in public, as the Skypole Sword Emperor who was willing to help others, he naturally couldn't bear to reject Wu Ming's request. The feeling of coming to the martial arts arena was not great, but the feeling of being humiliated in public was extraordinary. If not for this, Tianyang would have taken care of Wu Ming on the side of the road. How could he have let him be so arrogant until now? "Master, Master," and at this moment, a clear voice rang out from the door. Tianyang turned his head to look, only to see Ling Yuhan directly rushing in and coming to his side. "Yuhan, why are you here?" Tianyang was surprised. Wasn't Ling Yuhan supposed to be practicing the Ice Emperor's heavenly sword technique? Could it be that the compatibility between Ling Yuhan and the Ice Emperor's heavenly sword technique was so strong? In just one day, he had successfully mastered the introductory chapter. "I have mastered the introductory chapter of the Ice Emperor's heavenly sword technique. I wanted to report it to you, but I heard that you wanted to fight with Wu Ming," Ling Yuhan said while panting. Although she was at the 9th level of the body refinement realm, her inner energy had increased by a lot after she had mastered the Ice Emperor's heavenly sword technique. However, to dash a few thousand meters in 1 minute was quite a burden for Ling Yuhan. "You have mastered the introductory chapter of the Ice Emperor's heavenly sword technique?" Hearing this news, even Tianyang was surprised. "Not bad. You can achieve this on your first try. However, to master the first volume, you must first open your sea of qi and break through to the bright qi realm," Tianyang said seriously. All techniques, regardless of whether it was the lower class of the yellow level or the upper class of the heaven level, could only be mastered in the bright qi realm. Perhaps some techniques would have introductory chapters in the body refinement realm. However, if a body refinement realm cultivator tried to master the technique, the only outcome would be a backlash. This was Ling Yuhan's first time learning a technique. Tianyang naturally did not want her to suffer a backlash from the Ice Emperor's heavenly sword technique. Otherwise, even the Tianji Sword Emperor would not be able to help her easily. "I know. However, Master, why are you fighting with Wu Ming?" Ling Yuhan immediately nodded after being lectured by Tianyang. Then, she remembered the purpose of her trip and hurriedly asked. "Wu Ming is not an ordinary bright qi realm cultivator. Even if he was in the top 30 of the stone wall, he could enter. Master, wait. Before Ling Yuhan could finish her sentence, Tianyang covered her mouth with his finger. Then, Tianyang's lips curled into a smile. Don't tell me you don't even trust your master? Tianyang chuckled. Ling Yuhan was stunned when she heard this. Then, she recalled the shocking scene in the fearsome Beast Mountain range and suddenly realized what was going on. Although Wu Meng was powerful, who was Tianyang? He was someone who could kill multiple Class 2 magical beasts. Perhaps even the top 20 in the inner sect could not do that. So, what could a mere Wu Meng do? So that's how it is. Ling Yuhan nodded, as if he understood. Then, he took a few steps back and revealed a smile. Then, I wish Master victory. Tianyang nodded and turned to look at Wu Meng. When Wu Meng saw this, a sinister smile appeared on his face. Are you done? If you are, then get on the stage and accept your death. Wu Meng laughed sinisterly. Then, he took a step forward and stepped onto the stage. Chapter 77. Brat, you still have 3 minutes to continue being arrogant. After 3 minutes, I, Wu Meng, will torture you to death. Wu Meng laughed sinisterly. In his opinion, Tianyang, who was only in the body refinement realm, was the easiest target to bully. True Yuan surged as Wu Meng's fist was ready for a sudden attack. Hearing this, Tianyang raised his eyebrows. Oh, is that so? In the next moment, the situation in the arena changed. Wu Meng's figure suddenly disappeared from his original position. Like an eagle soaring in the sky, he directly rushed in front of Tianyang. It's an upper-grade yellow rank movement technique, eagle steps. I didn't expect senior brother Wu Meng to use a martial technique of this level. Outside the arena, some people immediately recognized the movement technique that Wu Meng used and cried out in surprise. This eagle steps was a famous upper-grade yellow rank martial technique in the Lingyun sect's intersect martial skill pavilion. It was one of the best upper-grade yellow rank movement techniques. The difficulty of cultivating it was extremely high for an ordinary intersect disciple. It was no wonder that people cried out in surprise. You dare to use upper-grade yellow rank movement technique to embarrass yourself? Tianyang chuckled and executed dragon, subduing step. His figure suddenly became illusory. Although he didn't move too far away, Wu Meng suddenly realized that he couldn't lock onto Yi Shiwen anymore. This is also a movement technique. I didn't expect Tianyang to have such a movement technique. After arriving at the arena, Wu Meng wasn't as impulsive as before. A trace of greed flashed across his eyes. It's a waste to give this kind of movement technique to a trash in the body refinement realm. Later, not only will I defeat him, I will also force him to hand over this movement technique. If I can obtain this movement technique, I definitely have the ability to enter the top 20. Then, the reward from that big event will be even greater. Wu Meng licked his lips as a fierce light flashed in his eyes. In the next moment, Wu Meng no longer locked onto Yi Shiwen and shouted, Tianyang, give me your life. Mad Lion Fist. The lion roared, and the sound waves surged out. It seemed to want to use this to affect Tianyang's movements. However, as the Tianji Sword Emperor, would Tianyang be affected by martial arts of this level? The answer was no. Tianyang didn't even pause. On the contrary, he walked towards Wu Meng at an even faster speed. Die for me. Seeing that his lion's roar had no effect, Wu Meng coldly snorted. A reddish-yellow, true essence condensed on his fist, and he directly punched towards Tianyang. Peerless Yellow Tear. Senior martial brother Wu Meng used a peerless yellow-ranked fist art right from the start. Tianyang is in trouble now. Hearing the exclamation from the side, Tianyang's lips curled up. This Mad Lion Fist technique was indeed stronger than before. Perhaps Wu Meng had been hiding his true strength. However, what was the point of hiding it? Before this, Tianyang was able to easily break through the Mad Lion Fist, and now it was the same. Tong Ming Fist. Tianyang shouted in a low voice. The true essence of the peak of the 9th level of the body refinement realm condensed on his fist, following which it fiercely collided with Wu Meng's Mad Lion Fist. Bang! Waves of air burst out from the center of the two of them, blowing the figures of the spectators at the side, and other than Ling Yuhan, the pupils of everyone else contracted. Tianyang was actually able to go head-to-head with Wu Ming, who mainly relied on physical strength, and not be at a disadvantage. You're just a piece of trash who dares to be arrogant because of your innate strength. Mad Lion Fist is just a warm-up. After his attack failed, Wu Ming immediately retreated. Using the eagle walk, Wu Ming's movement speed greatly increased. Retreating to the edge of the stage, Wu Ming coldly snorted. At this moment, Tianyang lightly smiled. With a hook of his finger explode. Pooh! A muffled sound came from Wu Ming's body. The true essence that Wu Ming had just condensed was directly scattered by this word. Wu Ming's face turned from a normal red to an unhealthy red, following which he retreated a few steps and vomited a mouthful of blood. Blood splattered onto the ground, splashing into small blood flowers. The spectators outside the stage were all dumbfounded. What happened? Tianyang was clearly tens of meters away from Wu Ming. Why did Wu Ming vomit blood? It's internal force. You actually know internal force. Wu Ming suddenly raised his head. A fierce light flashed in his eyes, following which he used the eagle walk and his speed suddenly increased to an extreme. You actually dared to use internal force to injure me. Tianyang, you're dead meat. Peerless yellow rank, wind fire fist. Wu Ming roared and directly arrived in front of Tianyang. On his fist, flames burned, bringing about gusts of wind. Although the wind fire fist was also a peerless yellow rank, it was superior to the Mad Lion Fist. Senior Wu Ming actually used the wind fire fist. It's over. This is his trump card. Tianyang, it's over. Some people muttered as they stared blankly at Wu Ming, who was angered by Tianyang and directly used the wind fire fist. However, as the one being attacked, Tianyang's eyes narrowed slightly. This wind fire fist was indeed much stronger than the Mad Lion Fist. It's a pity that you're still weak. Tianyang chuckled, following which he suddenly clenched his fist. The Earth Dragon's strength of the Earth Dragon Constitution circulated throughout his body. Weak? Then, I'll let you see how strong the weak you speak of is. Wu Ming said malevolently. True energy gathered crazily and flames burned fiercely. With a huge gust of wind, he ruthlessly attacked Tianyang. Telepathic sword finger. Tianyang shouted softly. True energy gathered at the tip of his finger, following which he directly faced Wu Ming's wind fire fist. Using finger techniques against fist techniques? Is Tianyang crazy? If this round continues, Tianyang's finger will definitely be fractured. However, just as that person exclaimed, Tianyang's finger and Wu Ming's fist had already collided. Bang! The finger glow and the wind fire fist exploded at an extremely short distance. Tianyang and Wu Ming's fingers and fists also collided with each other. Unlike what everyone had imagined, Tianyang's face was calm at this moment. However, Wu Ming's face suddenly contorted. Was this a human's finger? This was clearly a sword. A short sword that was only as wide as a finger. When he threw a punch, it was as if he had punched the tip of an extremely sharp sword. If not for Wu Ming's innate physical strength being strong enough, just this ordinary contact would be enough to split his flesh open. Break for me, Wu Ming roared angrily. He did not believe that Tianyang's finger could be so strong. The wind fire fist continued to circulate, but the finger glow of the telepathic sword finger seemed to multiply endlessly. No matter how strong the wind fire fist was, it was still the same. It was easy and natural. It was as if the finger glow of the telepathic sword finger was just playing with the wind fire fist. Once it exploded with its true power, Wu Ming's trump card would be shattered in an instant. You're pretty good to be able to force me to use my martial soul. However, in front of my martial soul, you're only in the body refinement realm. Only death awaits you. Wu Ming roared angrily. In the next moment, a stone green color appeared on Wu Ming's skin and spread rapidly. This is Wu Ming's martial soul. It's an upper-grade yellow-rank martial soul that's close to the mystic rank rock. The person beside him immediately recognized the details of Wu Ming's martial soul. Hearing this, Wu Ming grinned in enjoyment. and suddenly increased the strength of his wind-fire fist. Seeing this, Tianyang's eyes flashed. This guy was finally using his martial soul. "Sword come!" Tianyang shouted. Hearing this, Ling Yuhan immediately reacted and threw the Jade Sea sword to Tianyang. As if he had eyes on the back of his head, Tianyang directly caught the Jade Sea sword. Then, the Sky Firmament sword was attached to it. Circulating his true origin, the Jade Sea sword emitted a bright light. One sword flowing cloud. Boom! Wu Meng's body flew out like a cannonball. Blood spurted out of his mouth. In the next moment, he landed on the ground with a heavy thud. All the bones in his body felt as if they were about to fall apart. A tearing pain filled Wu Meng's head. In the next moment, his head tilted and he fainted. He was seriously injured. Seeing this, everyone fell into a daze. Chapter 78. Looking at the unconscious Wu Meng, who was obviously seriously injured, everyone in the audience fell into a strange state of shock. Tianyang, a Tianyang who obtained first place in the Lingyun sect's Inner Disciple Assessment and then defeated Xiao Ping, who was ranked 50th on the first day of entering the Inner Disciple Assessment, breaking the record of the Lingyun sect. Unexpectedly, on the second day, he defeated Wu Meng, who was ranked 36th, who was countless times stronger than Xiao Ping. Such a terrifying battle record directly shocked everyone. If they knew that Tianyang was still called trash a few months ago, what would they think? What would they think in their hearts? 36th, not high, not low. But now it's mine. The corner of Tianyang's mouth curved into a trace of a smile. Then he jumped off the stage. Cultivation resources were usually given out at the end of the month. Before the end of the month, as long as one could reach a certain rank, one would be able to receive cultivation resources for that rank. Now, Tianyang had already snatched Wu Meng's rank and reached 36th. From the beginning, his cultivation resources were also above those who entered the Inner Disciple Assessment at the same time. Let's go. After saying this to Ling Yuhan, Tianyang walked out of the martial arts arena. The air quality in this place was really not good. After staying here for a long time, it was also very stuffy. Ling Yuhan, on the other hand, had a gentle smile on her face. She knew that with Tianyang's strength, not to mention Wu Meng, even if two Wu Meng fought together, they would only end up in defeat. Then, she took a step forward and followed him. Below the martial arts arena, the seriously injured Wu Meng was still unconscious. However, this martial arts arena, where there would usually be another battle after one battle, had not been stepped up. Everyone was shocked by Tianyang's strength. It's only the second day, and Tianyang has already rushed to this point. Then, does that mean that as long as Tianyang has enough time to develop, even the number one senior brother Yi Zhanling will be replaced by him? A young man murmured. When the people around him heard this, they did not refute or mock him. Instead, they shivered. Could it be that the number one inner disciple position that he had held for more than a year would change because of Tianyang's appearance? Probably don't know, maybe. She opened her mouth to refute, but the person beside her spat out the last three words. Tianyang and the others didn't know what happened on the battle stage after Tianyang left. As for Gu Xiu, Lu Hanxi, and the others who had entered the intersect with him, they were currently in the martial skill pavilion or other places. They would not come to the martial arts arena. After all, he had just entered the Inner Disciples, and he was definitely ranked at the bottom of the Inner Disciples. If he were to head to the sparring ring, wouldn't he be asking for a beating? However, the news that Tianyang had defeated 2 of the top 50 geniuses within 2 days of entering the Soaring Cloud sect would soon spread throughout the entire Soaring Cloud sect. Now, there are already signs of fermenting. Come, give me your hand. I want to see the extent of your cultivation of the Ice Emperor's heavenly sword technique. After returning to the small courtyard, Tianyang sat at a small stone table in the courtyard and said to Ling Yuhan. Hearing this, Ling Yuhan's face turned red. However, she did not hesitate and extended her hand. Her pure white arm was like a tender lotus. It was as if water could be poked out with just a touch. Although she often used a sword, there were no calluses on her palm that would affect her appearance. In addition to Ling Yuhan's beautiful appearance, she would be a perfect beauty no matter if it was now or 10,000 years ago. Not bad. The Ice Emperor's heavenly sword technique is more compatible with you than I expected. However, you have only just mastered the introductory chapter. Don't try to break through to the clear chi realm in a short period of time. Otherwise, if you make a mistake, it will be easy for all your previous efforts to be wasted. Although you can directly cultivate the first volume after reaching the clear chi realm, without the introductory chapter, the cultivation of the first volume will be very difficult. Tianyang said. Hearing this, Ling Yuhan nodded her head obediently. After all, Tianyang did not cultivate the Ice Emperor's heavenly sword technique. He only used it as a reference to create his own sword technique and cultivation technique. The Divine Desolate Sky Spirit technique was a cultivation technique that Tianyang created himself. Although it was not perfect, its power was not any weaker than the Ice Emperor's heavenly sword technique. When it was perfected, the heaven, earth, black, and yellow classification system would not be able to accommodate the power of the Divine Desolate Sky Spirit technique. As the person who personally cultivated the Ice Emperor's heavenly sword technique, Ling Yuhan had the deepest feelings. The Ice Emperor's heavenly sword technique was like a guide. It guided her scattered vital energy and gathered it into some of her meridians. Moreover, following the flow of vital energy in her meridians, after completing a cycle, her vital energy had increased by quite a bit. Ling Yuhan was also very surprised by this situation. The way she looked at Tianyang suddenly changed. A person who could casually throw out a cultivation technique of this level was definitely not an ordinary person. Her choice was countless times more correct than the choices she made in the past. All right, you didn't encounter any problems with the cultivation of the Ice Emperor's heavenly sword technique. As long as you continue to cultivate according to normal conditions, you don't need my help. Tianyang smiled. Hearing this, Ling Yuhan obediently retracted her arm. Then, she took out the blue sea sword from the space bag and went to the side to practice her sword technique. Holding the hilt of the blue sea sword, Ling Yuhan's heart could not help but tremble. Just a while ago, Tianyang also held this sword. Tianyang did not notice the girl's abnormality. After looking around in boredom, he stood up and walked into the room. The vital energy in his body was slightly agitated. Tianyang's mood was like his vital energy. Now, Tianyang had reached the peak of what he could do in all aspects. Moreover, he was already prepared. In other words, it was time for Tianyang to open his sea of qi and achieve the clear qi state. With a smile, Tianyang stepped into his room. The spirit stones that he received in the outer sect training hall had been set up by him into a small spirit gathering formation. Moreover, it was at the level of a formation master. It was more than enough for Tianyang to open his sea of qi and achieve the clear qi state. Sitting cross-legged in the center of the spirit gathering formation, Tianyang sensed the abundant spiritual qi of heaven and earth around him. He closed his eyes and immersed his mind. The 500 feet of qi and blood had been completely integrated into his body. Coupled with the strength of the earth dragon body, he could definitely do it better than in his previous life. His vital energy revolved, and the words of the divine wilderness heaven spirit art appeared in his mind. Entering the clear qi state required a cultivation technique. In his mind, the heavenly sword trembled slightly. In the next moment, Tianyang touched that layer of barrier. This barrier that had blocked countless people was like a piece of paper to Tianyang. It could be broken with a poke. His vital energy revolved faster, and that layer of barrier was completely broken by Tianyang. Then, a force appeared on Tianyang's body. Tianyang's eyes suddenly opened, and Xinguang burst out. Now,